The deputy's hand was already reaching for Evelyn's throat when the door exploded inward. What happened next would turn a frozen frontier town into a battleground, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is corner a woman who has nothing left to lose. This is the story of Black Hollow, where an entire town wanted one innocent woman dead, and the scarred mountain hunter who made them all regret it. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The first time Boone Callahan saw Evelyn Mercer, she was buying rope. That detail would stick with him later, after everything went to hell. The way her hands shook as she counted out coins on the counter. The way she kept her eyes down, like she was trying to disappear into the floorboards of Miller's General Store. The way every person in that room went silent when she walked in. The kind of silence that feels like a physical thing pressing against your chest. Boone was restocking supplies, flour, salt, ammunition, the basics that would see him through another month alone on Raven Ridge. He'd come down from the mountain that morning through snow that reached his horse's belly, and he'd already decided this would be his last trip to Black Hollow for the season. Maybe forever. The town had a sickness to it lately, something rotten that had nothing to do with the brutal winter settling into the Colorado Territory. He was watching Miller wrap his purchases when the woman entered. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Well, well. That was Frank Jessup, the deputy, leaning against the pot-bellied stove like he owned the place. Look what crawled out of whatever hole it's been hiding in. Evelyn Mercer didn't respond. She made her way to the counter, moving carefully, like someone navigating a room full of sleeping snakes. We don't serve murderers here, Miller said flatly. The storekeeper was a heavy man with a face like uncooked dough, and his thick fingers stopped moving on Boone's parcels. You can leave. I have money. Evelyn's voice was quiet but steady. I need rope, lamp oil, and cornmeal. I said we don't serve your kind. Boone studied her more carefully now. She was younger than he'd first thought. Maybe 25, 26. Thin in a way that said she'd been skipping meals. Her coat was patched and repatched, and her boots were splitting at the seams. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. Gray eyes, the color of storm clouds, and completely empty of hope. He'd seen that look before. On men who'd reached the end of their rope. On soldiers who'd watched too many friends die. On his own face, in the broken mirror of his cabin, during the worst of those first winters alone. The lady has money, Boone said quietly. Seems to me that spends the same as anyone else's. Every head in the store turned toward him. Frank Jessup pushed away from the stove, his hand dropping instinctively to the revolver on his hip. This ain't your business, Callahan, unless you're taking up with outlaws now. That what this is? Don't know what you're talking about. The hell you don't. The deputy's face was flushed, partly from the stove's heat, partly from something meaner. Whole territory knows about this one. She was shacked up with the Riker gang when the marshals raided their camp last spring. Found her sleeping in Cade Riker's own tent. Only reason she ain't hanging is because she's got a clever tongue and tits. Evelyn's jaw tightened, but she didn't look at the deputy. She kept her eyes on Miller, kept her coins on the counter. That's enough, Boone said. Enough? Jessup laughed, an ugly sound. I'm just getting started. See, we got laws about harboring criminals in this town, about aiding and abetting known associates of, I said that's enough. Something in Boone's voice made the deputy's words die in his throat. It wasn't volume. Boone never raised his voice. It was something else, something cold and final, like the sound of ice cracking under your feet when you're miles from shore. Jessup's hand was still on his gun. You threatening a lawman, mountain man? Just stating a fact. The lady came in here to buy supplies. She's got money. Either sell to her or don't, but quit running your mouth about things you don't understand. I understand plenty. I understand she spread her legs for the worst gang of killers this territory ever saw. I understand good men died because of what that gang did, and she was right there with them, living off stolen money, and Boone moved. He didn't think about it, didn't plan it. 1 second he was standing by the counter with his parcels. The next he had Frank Jessup by the collar, lifting him half off his feet. The deputy's gun was still in its holster. He hadn't even seen Boone coming. You're going to apologize, Boone said quietly. To the lady. Jessup's face had gone from red to purple. His hand scrabbled at Boone's wrist, but it was like trying to bend iron. Let go. After you apologize. Fuck you and fuck that outlaw whore. Boone's fist caught him in the solar plexus, driving all the air from his lungs. The deputy crumpled, gasping, and Boone let him drop to the floor. The store had gone completely silent. Miller was pressed against his shelves, eyes wide. The other customers, two ranch hands and an old woman Boone didn't recognize, looked like they were watching a hanging. Evelyn Mercer stood frozen at the counter, her face pale. "Miller," Boone said calmly, "add the lady's supplies to my bill. Rope, lamp oil, and cornmeal," she said, "and throw in some dried beef and beans, coffee too." "Now wait just a minute. How much?" The storekeeper's mouth opened and closed. He looked at the deputy, still wheezing on the floor, then back at Boone. $12, he said finally, "for everything." Boone counted out bills, added 3 more for good measure, and set them on the counter. "Package it up." He turned to Evelyn. Up close, he could see the shadows under her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly. Could see the old bruises fading on her wrist, barely visible below her frayed sleeve. "You got a way to carry all this?" he asked. She nodded slowly. You didn't have to. Where are you staying?" "The old Hendricks shack, east end of town, past the—" "I know it." Everyone knew it. A crooked little structure that should have been torn down years ago, with walls so thin you could see daylight through the gaps. "That place got a working stove?" "Sometimes. It's going to get colder. Tonight, probably." "You got enough firewood?" "I'll manage." Behind them, Frank Jessup had made it to his hands and knees. His breathing was ragged, painful. You're dead, Callahan," he gasped. "Both of you. Dead." Boone ignored him. Miller had started wrapping the supplies with shaking hands, working faster than Boone had ever seen him move. "Listen," Boone said to Evelyn, keeping his voice low. "Whatever happened with that gang, whatever people think they know, that's not my business. But I've seen enough of this town to know when someone's getting a raw deal. You need help. You come find me on Raven Ridge. Anyone can point you the right direction." "Why?" The word came out barely above a whisper. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "Don't need to know you to see when something's wrong." Miller practically threw the bundled supplies across the counter. Boone gathered them up, then handed them to Evelyn. Their fingers touched briefly. Hers were ice cold. "Go on," he said. "Get home before the snow starts up again." She looked at him for a long moment, those gray eyes searching his face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Then she took the supplies and walked out, moving quickly, her boots crunching in the snow outside. Boone collected his own parcels. "You just made a powerful enemy," Miller said quietly. "Frank's got friends. Important friends." "So I hear. I'm serious, Callahan. Silas Granger's been very clear about how this town should handle that woman. And Granger owns half of Black Hollow. The other half he controls through the bank. You cross him, you'll regret it." Boone shouldered his supplies and headed for the door. He paused on the threshold, looking back at the deputy, who was now sitting against the stove, hatred burning in his eyes. "Tell your important friends," Boone said, "that I don't come down from the mountain often. But when I do, I expect people to behave like civilized human beings. That clear enough?" He didn't wait for an answer. Ta-ta. The ride back to Raven Ridge took 3 hours through deepening snow. Boone's horse, a rangy gray gelding named Smoke, knew the trail even when the path disappeared under fresh powder. The temperature was dropping fast, the way it did in late November, when winter stopped being a threat and became a certainty. Boone's cabin sat on a shelf of rock, about 200 feet below the ridgeline, positioned where the morning sun would hit it first, and the afternoon winds would mostly pass overhead. He'd built it himself 7 years ago, after everything. Logs from pine trees he'd felled and stripped, stones from the mountain itself for the chimney and foundation, a roof that could hold 5 feet of snow without groaning. It was small, one main room with a sleeping loft, a root cellar dug into the hillside, a lean-to for Smoke and the mule. But it was solid, tight, the kind of place you could survive in when the world tried its best to kill you. He unloaded his supplies, rubbed down Smoke, and got a fire going in the stone hearth. The cabin warmed slowly, the way it always did, heat seeping into wood and stone that had gone cold during his absence. Boone made coffee, strong and black, and sat in his chair by the window. He He told himself he was thinking about the winter ahead, about whether his traps would yield enough fur to make another trip to town worthwhile, about the deer he'd spotted on the north face, and whether they'd move to lower ground when the next storm hit. But really, he was thinking about gray eyes and trembling hands, and the sound of Frank Jessup's voice saying, "Outlaw whore." He'd meant what he told Miller. Whatever had happened with the Riker gang wasn't his business. Boone had stopped caring about other people's problems the day he buried his wife and son in ground, so frozen he'd needed dynamite to break it. But there was something about the way that whole town had looked at Evelyn Mercer. Not with anger he could understand, but with satisfaction, like they enjoyed her suffering, like her pain was entertainment. That was the part that stuck in his throat. Boone had known Cade Riker by reputation. Everyone in the territory had. The Riker gang had torn through Colorado and Wyoming for 3 years, hitting banks, stage lines, even a federal payroll once. They'd killed at least a dozen men, maybe more. When the marshals finally cornered them in a box canyon near the Wyoming border, the shootout had lasted 6 hours and left every gang member dead, except for 2 who'd been hanged later in Cheyenne. If Evelyn Mercer had really been with them, really been part of that. But she hadn't looked like a killer. She'd looked like someone who'd been ground down to nothing and was still trying to stand. The coffee had gone cold in his cup when he heard the first gunshot. Boone was on his feet before the echo died, rifle in hand, moving to the window. The shot had come from down the mountain, from the direction of town. Single shot, probably a pistol. Could have been anything. Someone scaring off wolves, a drunk celebrating, 100 different things. The second shot came 30 seconds later. Then a third. Then the screaming started. It was faint, torn apart by wind and distance, but unmistakable. A woman's voice, high and terrified. Boone grabbed his coat. Smoke protested being saddled again so soon, but Boone didn't have time for the mule, and he needed speed. He took the trail at a reckless pace, the gelding's hooves skidding on ice, branches whipping past in the darkness. The screaming had stopped by the time he reached the outskirts of Black Hollow. The Hendricks shack was burning. Not a lot, just one corner of the structure, flames eating at old wood that was dry as kindling despite the snow. But enough. The orange glow lit up the night, casting wild shadows across the street. A crowd had gathered, 20 people, maybe more, standing in a rough circle around the shack. Nobody was trying to put out the fire. Nobody was moving to help. They were just watching. Boone saw Evelyn then. She was on her knees in the snow, her face bleeding, the supplies he'd bought scattered around her. Frank Jessup stood over her, his gun drawn, pointed at her head. "Please," she was saying. "Please, I don't know where it is. I swear to God I don't know." "Liar!" Jessup kicked her in the ribs, and she went down hard. "The gold certificates are worth $50,000, maybe more. You think we're stupid? You think we don't know you were sleeping with Riker for months? He told you where they hid it. I know he did. He didn't tell me anything. He kept me locked in." Another kick. This one caught her in the face, snapping her head back. Something cold and terrible settled into Boone's chest. He dismounted and walked toward the crowd. People noticed him coming. They parted automatically, the way they might step aside for a bear or a mountain lion, something dangerous they didn't want to provoke. "Jessup," Boone said quietly. The deputy spun, gun swinging toward him. "I warned you, Callahan. I warned you what would happen if you—" "Step away from her. This is official business. This woman is wanted for questioning in connection with—" "I said step away." Frank Jessup's face twisted into something ugly. "You know what? Fine. You want to die protecting an outlaw whore, that's your choice. Silas Granger's given me full authority to—" Boone shot him. Not to kill, though part of him wanted to. He put the bullet through Jessup's gun hand, the .44 round shattering bone and metal both. The deputy's pistol spun away into the snow, and Jessup went down screaming, clutching his ruined hand. The crowd exploded into chaos. People running, shouting, scattering in every direction. Boone ignored them all. He walked to where Evelyn lay in the snow, knelt beside her. "Can you stand?" She looked up at him with those gray eyes, now filled with blood from a cut above her eyebrow. You shot the deputy. Can you stand?" he repeated. I think so." He helped her to her feet. She swayed, nearly fell, and he caught her. She weighed almost nothing. "My things," she said faintly. "My supplies." Leave them. But I don't have anything else. I said leave them. He guided her toward Smoke, who was dancing nervously, spooked by the gunshot and the fire. We need to move. Now. Behind them, Frank Jessup was still screaming, calling for help, calling for someone to stop them. But the crowd had vanished. Nobody wanted to be anywhere near this. Boone lifted Evelyn into the saddle, then swung up behind her. She slumped against him, barely conscious. Hold on, he said. Then he turned Smoke toward the mountain and rode. The ride up was brutal. The temperature had dropped below zero, and the wind cut like knives. Evelyn drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling things Boone couldn't make out. He kept one arm locked around her waist, keeping her in the saddle, while Smoke fought his way through snow that kept getting deeper. By the time they reached the cabin, both the woman and the horse were done. Boone carried Evelyn inside, laid her on his bed, the only bed, and got the fire built up high. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, her face pale as milk except for the blood and bruises. When he pulled back her coat to check for other injuries, he found more bruises, old ones. Some of them months old, yellowed and fading. Others newer, purple and tender. Someone had been beating her regularly. He cleaned the cut on her forehead, wrapped her ribs where Jessup had kicked her. The fire crackled and popped, throwing heat into the small space. Outside, the wind was rising, carrying the promise of the worst storm of the season. Evelyn's eyes opened around midnight. Where? Her voice was a whisper. My cabin. Raven Ridge, you're safe. Safe. She said the word like it was foreign, like she didn't quite believe it existed. You shot the deputy. He'll live. Might not use that hand again, but he'll live. They'll come for you. They'll hang you for this. Boone added another log to the fire. Let them try. She was quiet for a long time, just staring at the ceiling. The cabin creaked around them as the wind picked up. Snow began pattering against the windows like thrown sand. Why? She asked finally. Why did you help me? It was the same question she'd asked in the store. Boone still didn't have a good answer. Seemed like the right thing to do, he said. Nobody does the right thing anymore. Not in Black Hollow, not anywhere. Then I guess I'm nobody. That got something that might have been a laugh, though it died quickly. I'm not what they say I am, she said quietly. I wasn't with the Riker gang, not the way they think. Don't have to explain yourself to me. Yes, I do. She tried to sit up, winced, settled back down. You risked everything to help me. You deserve to know the truth. The truth can wait. Right now, you need to rest. I need you to understand. Her gray eyes found his across the dim cabin. My brother Thomas, he was a clerk at the bank in Black Hollow. 3 years ago, the Riker gang robbed it, killed the manager, killed a customer who tried to stop them. But they didn't kill Thomas. They took him with them. Boone went still. I spent months looking for him. Hired private detectives, talked to sheriffs, followed every rumor, nothing. Then, last spring, I got a letter. No signature, just coordinates and a date. I thought, maybe it was from Thomas. Maybe he'd escaped, needed help. So you went. So I went. Her voice was flat now, dead. It was a trap. The gang was camped there, and they grabbed me the second I rode in. Cade Riker, he thought it was funny, keeping me there, making me cook their meals, clean their clothes, making sure I understood what would happen if I tried to run. What about your brother? Dead. The word fell like a stone. They showed me his grave. He'd been dead for 2 years, killed during the robbery. They just kept his identification, used it to lure me in. Riker said I was insurance. If the law caught up with them, they'd have a hostage. Boone's hands had curled into fists without him realizing it. When the marshals came, Evelyn continued, it happened so fast. Gunfire everywhere, men dying, horses screaming. I hid in Riker's tent because it was the only cover. When it was over, the marshals found me there, and they thought, everyone thought, that you were his woman. Yes. She closed her eyes. I told them the truth, over and over. But the marshals didn't believe me. The people in Black Hollow didn't believe me. The judge in Denver said there wasn't enough evidence to convict me of any crime, but there wasn't enough evidence to prove my innocence either. So they let me go, and I came back to Black Hollow because I had nowhere else to go. And the town decided I was guilty anyway. The wind howled outside, rattling the shutters. That's why they've been treating you like dirt, Boone said. That's part of it. But there's more. She looked at him again. The Riker gang stole a lot of money, mostly gold certificates from various robberies. Nobody knows where it is. The marshals searched their camp and found nothing, and everyone in Black Hollow thinks I know where Riker hid it. Do you? No. But they don't believe that. Frank Jessup's been harassing me for months trying to make me talk. Other men, too. They break into my shack, go through my things, follow me when I leave town. A few weeks ago, someone tried to drag me into an alley. They said they'd let me go if I told them where the gold was. Who? I don't know. 3 men, faces covered. I managed to get away, but she touched her ribs gingerly. They made their point. Boone stood and walked to the window. Outside, the storm was intensifying. Snow fell so thick he could barely see 10 feet. By morning, the trails would be impassable. Nobody would be able to reach the cabin for days, maybe weeks. Good. There's something else you should know, Evelyn said quietly. Silas Granger. The man who owns half the town. He owned the bank the Riker gang robbed. He also owned several businesses they hit. Lost thousands, supposedly. He's been the loudest voice calling for me to be punished. You think he's behind the harassment? I know he is. Frank Jessup works for him, not for the town. Most of the men who've come after me have been his ranch hands or business partners. He wants that gold, and he's convinced I know where it is. Boone turned back to face her. And if you did know? If you could lead him to it? Then he'd kill me the second I gave it up. That's why I'm still alive. He can't risk silencing me until he has what he wants. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have told you all this. You didn't ask for any of it. In the morning, when the storm passes, I'll leave. Find somewhere else to... You're not going anywhere. But Granger will come looking. He'll bring men, guns. You can't fight the whole town. Watch me. She stared at him. You don't understand. Silas Granger is not a man who forgives or forgets. He'll see you as an obstacle, and he removes obstacles. Permanently. Then he'd better bring an army. This isn't your fight. It is now. Boone crossed to the bed, looked down at her. You came to Black Hollow looking for your brother, and that town chewed you up. You spent a year being tortured by men who should have protected you. That ends here. You're under my roof now, and nobody touches you. Nobody. Clear? Tears were sliding down her cheeks, though Boone wasn't sure she realized it. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for a stranger? Because 7 years ago, Boone's wife Sarah had fallen sick with the fever that swept through Black Hollow. Because he'd ridden down from the mountain to get help, to bring the doctor, to save her. Because the town leaders had locked their doors, afraid of contagion, and refused to let the doctor leave. Because by the time Boone broke down the door and dragged the doctor back up the mountain at gunpoint, Sarah and their 5-year-old son Daniel were already dead. Because the people of Black Hollow were cowards and bullies, and Boone had spent 7 years wishing he'd burned the whole town to ash. But he didn't say any of that. Get some sleep, he said instead. Storm's gonna last a few days. We'll figure out the rest when it passes. The storm hit like a living thing. By dawn, snow was piling up in drifts 6 feet high. The wind screamed around the cabin, trying to rip the roof off. Boone kept the fire going, melted snow for water, rationed the food he had stored. Evelyn slept for most of the first day, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. When she woke, she was feverish, mumbling about her brother, about men with guns, about gold that didn't exist. Boone sat beside her, cooling her forehead with wet cloth, forcing water past her cracked lips. On the second day, the fever broke. She woke clear-headed for the first time, looking around the cabin with eyes that actually saw. How long have I been here? 2 days? The storm? Still going, might last another day or two. She tried to sit up, succeeded this time. I should help. You shouldn't have to. You should rest. I've been resting, and I'm not helpless. She looked at him steadily. You saved my life. The least I can do is not be a burden. So Boone let her help. She was slow at first, still recovering from the beating and the fever. But she was stubborn. She insisted on cooking dinner, venison stew with the last of his vegetables. She mended his spare clothes, fixed a rip in his coat that he'd been meaning to patch for months. She organized his supplies, swept the floor, did all the small things that Boone had stopped caring about years ago. The cabin felt different with her in it, less like a cave where a man hid from the world, more like a home. On the third day, the storm finally began to ease. They were sitting by the fire drinking coffee when Evelyn spoke. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why do you live up here alone? Miller said something back in the store about you not coming to town often, like you avoid people." Boone was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the wind was dying down, the snow tapering off to occasional flurries. "I had a wife once," he said finally, "and a son. They died 7 years ago. Fever swept through Black Hollow, killed maybe 30 people. The town leaders quarantined themselves, wouldn't let anyone in or out. By the time I got help, it was too late. I'm sorry. After that, I didn't see much point in staying down there. Built this place, came up here, and that was that." "You've been alone for 7 years?" "More or less." She looked into her coffee cup. "Doesn't it get lonely?" "Lonely's better than being around people who'll let your family die to save their own skins." "Not everyone in that town was responsible for what happened." "Enough of them were." Boone stood, moved to the window. The sky was clearing, stars appearing through gaps in the clouds. Silas Granger was one of the town leaders who voted to keep the doctor locked up. So was the mayor. So were half the business owners who now treat you like garbage. They're cowards, and cowards don't change. Evelyn was silent for a while. Then, "My brother used to say something. He said the worst thing about bad people isn't what they do. It's that they make the good people stop believing in anything. Your brother was smart." "He was, and he died because of it." She set down her cup. "The bank robbery. Thomas was killed because he tried to stop them. He could have hidden, could have let them take the money and walk away. But that wasn't who he was." "Sounds like someone else I know." She looked up at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "You went into those mountains looking for him, even though it was dangerous, even though you had no guarantee he was alive. You did it anyway. And look where it got me. It got you here, in a warm cabin, with a full belly, safe from the people who wanted to hurt you. Could be worse." That got a small smile, the first real one he'd seen from her. "I suppose that's true." The next morning, the storm had passed completely, leaving behind a world buried in white. The snow was so deep that Boone had to dig out the door just to get outside. The cold was intense, the kind that froze the inside of your nose when you breathed. "I need to check my traps," Boone said over breakfast. "Make sure the animals didn't get buried. You'll be all right here for a few hours?" "I'll manage. Should I keep the fire going?" "Keep it high. Temperature's still dropping." He took his rifle and headed out into the frozen landscape. The traps were mostly buried, but he found 2 with rabbits, frozen solid. He reset them, checked the area for tracks, looked for any sign of the deer herd he'd spotted earlier. What he found instead were boot prints, fresh ones, less than a day old, leading up from the lower trail toward his cabin. Someone had been here. During the storm, or just after it ended. Someone had come up the mountain in weather that should have killed them, and they'd gotten close to the cabin before turning back. Boone knelt, studying the tracks. 2 sets of prints, maybe 3. Men, from the size. They'd approached to within 100 yards, then retreated. Scouts. He stood slowly, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved, but they were out there somewhere, watching, waiting. Silas Granger had found them. Boone headed back to the cabin at a run. Evelyn was at the window when he burst through the door. "What's wrong?" "We've got company coming. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. But they're coming." Her face went pale. "Granger?" "Has to be. Found tracks in the snow, fresh ones. Someone scouted the cabin, probably went back to report." "Then we need to run. If we leave now, we can—" "Run where? You see that snow? We'd freeze before we made it 5 miles, and they'd track us anyway. So what do we do?" Boone moved to the corner where he kept his weapons. 3 rifles, 2 shotguns, 4 pistols, and enough ammunition to fight a small war. "We make them regret coming up here." He spent the next hour barricading the cabin, moved furniture in front of windows, stacked firewood as makeshift barriers, positioned weapons at strategic points. Evelyn helped without being asked, her hands steady, despite the fear in her eyes. "How many do you think will come?" she asked. "Hard to say. Granger's rich, so he can afford to hire guns, but it's winter, and the mountain's dangerous. I'd guess 6 to 10 men. Maybe more if he's serious about this." "Can we hold them off?" "For a while. This cabin's solid. and I know every inch of this mountain. But if they're smart, they'll try to wait us out, siege us until we run out of food or water. How long can we last? Boone looked at their supplies. 3 weeks, maybe 4 if we're careful, assuming they don't burn us out first. That's what they did to my shack. Set it on fire to flush me out. They try that here, they'll learn the difference between rotten wood and proper construction. He handed her a revolver. You know how to use one of these? She took it carefully. Thomas taught me before he died. But I've never shot at a person. Hopefully you won't have to, but if someone comes through that door who isn't me, you put bullets in them until they stop moving. Understand? She nodded, though her hands were shaking again. Night fell, and they waited. Boone sat by the window with his rifle across his knees, watching the darkness. Evelyn tried to sleep, but kept jerking awake at every sound. The crack of settling wood, the whisper of wind, the distant call of an owl. Around midnight, she gave up and joined him at the window. Tell me about your wife, she said quietly. Boone didn't answer for a long time. Then, Sarah. Her name was Sarah. She was tough, tougher than me in a lot of ways. Came out west with her family when she was 15, survived the trip when half the wagon train didn't. We met in Black Hollow when I was working as a guide. She was the first person who looked at me and didn't see just another drifter. She saw something better? She saw what I could be, I guess. Married me anyway, even though I didn't have much to offer. We had Daniel a year later. He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Boy was wild, always running, always laughing. Sarah used to say he got that from me, though I don't remember being that happy. What happened when they got sick? Sarah first. Fever came on fast, wouldn't break. I rode to town, demanded the doctor. The town had already voted to quarantine themselves. Nobody in, nobody out. The doctor was trapped there whether he wanted to be or not. I argued, threatened, even pulled my gun. But Silas Granger had armed men at every building. They'd shoot anyone who tried to leave. His voice had gone flat, emotionless. By the time I got back to our cabin, this was before I built this place, Daniel was sick too. I tried everything. Cold water, warm blankets, herbs, prayers. Nothing worked. They died within hours of each other. Sarah first, then Daniel. He called for her at the end, couldn't understand why she wasn't answering. Evelyn's hand found his in the darkness. She didn't say anything. What was there to say? Just held on. I buried them on this north slope, Boone continued, high enough that the ground stays frozen year-round. Then I went back to Black Hollow with every intention of killing Silas Granger and everyone who'd helped him. But I couldn't do it. Couldn't pull the trigger on unarmed men, even ones who deserved it. So I left instead. Built this cabin and decided I was done with people. Until now. Until now. She squeezed his hand. I'm sorry you lost them, and I'm sorry that helping me might get you killed. I'm not dead yet. But you will be if Granger has his way. He's not going to give up on that gold, and he's not going to forgive you for shooting his deputy. Let him come. I've got a few things to say to Silas Granger myself. They sat together in the darkness, hands clasped, waiting for the dawn and whatever violence it would bring. The attack came 3 days later, just before dawn. Boone heard them before he saw them. The muffled crunch of boots in snow, the quiet jingle of harness, men trying and failing to move silently through the frozen wilderness. He was already awake, had been for hours, watching the first gray light creep across the eastern peaks. Evelyn, he said quietly, time to move. She was up instantly, no questions. They'd practiced this. She grabbed the revolver, positioned herself in the corner he'd designated, the spot with the most cover, the hardest angle for anyone shooting through the windows. Her face was pale but set. Boone counted shadows moving between the trees. 8 men. No, 9. Spread out in a loose semicircle around the cabin, rifles ready. They were trying to surround the place, cut off any escape route. One of them made a mistake, stepped into a patch of early light. Boone recognized him immediately. Cole Warwick, one of Granger's ranch foremen, built like a bull, mean as a snake, and dumb enough to think he was smart. Callahan! Warwick's voice boomed across the clearing. We know you're in there. Come out with the woman and nobody has to die today. Boone didn't answer. He watched the other men continue their positioning, noted who had rifles and who carried pistols, Look for the ones who seem nervous versus the ones who looked like they'd done this before. I'm authorized by Mr. Granger to make you an offer, Warwick continued. You hand over Evelyn Mercer, walk away from this, and we'll forget about what happened in town. You shot a lawman, Callahan, but Mr. Granger's willing to overlook that. This is your one chance. They're lying, Evelyn whispered from her corner. Granger doesn't forgive anything. I know. We got no quarrel with you, Mountain Man. Warwick again. This is about justice. That woman was part of the gang that killed good people, stole their money. She needs to answer for what she did. Boone finally spoke, his voice carrying easily across the snow. She already answered. The law in Denver cleared her. You got a problem with that? Take it up with the territorial judge. The law in Denver doesn't know what we know. That woman's got information about 50,000 in stolen certificates. Money that belongs to the people of Black Hollow. Money that belongs to Silas Granger, you mean? There was a pause. Warwick clearly hadn't expected Boone to say that out loud. Mr. Granger lost more than anyone in those robberies, Warwick said, his voice tighter now. He's got every right to. He's got no rights up here. This is my mountain. You're trespassing. Leave now, while you still can. Can't do that? We got orders. Then you got a problem. Boone saw Warwick signal to the other men. They started moving again, tightening the circle, getting ready for the rush. Last chance, Callahan. Send the woman out, or we're coming in. Come ahead. For a moment, nothing happened. The men in the trees seemed to hesitate, maybe realizing for the first time that this wasn't going to be as easy as Granger had promised. Then one of them, young, stupid, probably looking to impress his boss, broke from cover and charged the cabin. Boone shot him in the leg. The crack of the rifle was shockingly loud in the frozen air. The young man went down screaming, clutching his thigh, blood spreading across the snow. The other men scattered, diving behind trees and rocks. Next one's through the head, Boone shouted. You boys want to die for Silas Granger's gold, keep coming. Otherwise, get that idiot to a doctor before he bleeds out. Gunfire erupted from the tree line. Bullets slammed into the cabin walls, punched through windows, sent splinters flying. Boone dropped below the sill, counted shots, waited for the pause when they'd need to reload. You all right? He called to Evelyn. Still alive. Stay down. The shooting stopped. Boone risked a look through the window. The wounded man was being dragged back into the trees by two others. That left 6 guns still active. Maybe 7 if the wounded one could still shoot. Warwick, Boone shouted. Hey, how much is Granger paying you for this? Whatever it is, it's not worth dying. You can't hold out forever, came the reply. We got food, water, and reinforcements coming. You're trapped up here. So are you. That storm that just passed? Another one's coming tomorrow, maybe the day after. You really want to be stuck on this mountain in weather that'll freeze you solid? More silence. Boone could almost hear Warwick thinking, trying to figure out if he was bluffing about the storm. He wasn't. Boone could read weather the way some men read books, and every sign pointed to another big blow coming. We'll take our chances, Warwick finally yelled. Mr. Granger says that woman knows where the gold is, and we're not leaving without her. Evelyn moved beside Boone, staying low. He's not going to give up. None of them will. Granger probably promised them a share of the certificates if they bring me in. Then we need to make them understand what that'll cost. The shooting started again, more sustained this time. Boone returned fire, not trying to hit anyone, just keeping them pinned. He watched how they moved, noted the patterns. Warwick was directing them from behind a thick pine, using hand signals. 2 men on the left were trying to work their way around to the cabin's blind side. Another one was climbing higher, looking for an angle on the roof. They're trying to flank us, Boone said. Can they? Not easily. But if they get someone on the roof, they could drop dynamite down the chimney. Do they have dynamite? Granger probably gave them everything they needed. He shifted position, brought his rifle to bear on the man climbing. The angle was bad. Too many trees in the way. The shooter reached his position, a rocky outcrop about 40 feet above the cabin, and opened fire. Bullets punched through the roof. Evelyn flinched as wood chips rained down. That's not good. No, it's not. Boone aimed carefully, waited for the man to expose himself for another shot. When he did, Boone fired. The bullet caught the shooter in the shoulder, spinning him around. He lost his grip, slid down the icy rocks, and crashed into a snowdrift 20 feet below. He didn't get up. 2 down, Boone muttered. The remaining attackers pulled back, regrouping. Boone used the lull to reload, check their ammunition. They had plenty, but that wasn't the real problem. The real problem was that Warwick was right. They couldn't hold out forever. Eventually, Granger's men would wear them down, or the cold would, or they'd run out of food and water. "What are you thinking?" Evelyn asked. "I'm thinking we need to change the game. Right now they've got us pinned, and that's what they want. We need to make them react instead of us." "How?" Boone looked at the terrain outside, the positions of the remaining shooters, the way the morning light was starting to illuminate the clearing. "I'm going out there." "What? That's insane. They're expecting us to stay locked in here. If I can get behind them, create confusion, they'll panic. Hired guns don't like it when the situation turns against them. They'll kill you. They'll try." He moved to the back of the cabin, where a small door led to the root cellar. "You keep them busy from here. Don't expose yourself. Just shoot enough to make them think we're both still inside. Can you do that?" She gripped the revolver tighter. "I can do it, but Boone..." "Yeah? Don't die out there, please." He almost smiled. "Do my best." The root cellar was half buried in the hillside, accessed by a narrow tunnel that emerged about 30 yards behind the cabin, hidden by rocks and scrub pine. Boone had built it that way deliberately, an escape route in case of fire or siege. He crawled through the darkness, rifle slung across his back, moving as quietly as he could. The exit was covered in snow. He pushed through carefully, emerged into the pre-dawn cold. From here he could see the backs of 2 shooters positioned in the trees. They were focused on the cabin, didn't even glance behind them. Mistake. Boone circled wide, using the terrain. The snow was deep enough to muffle his footsteps, and the wind was picking up again, masking small sounds. He got within 20 feet of the nearest shooter before the man finally sensed something was wrong. He started to turn. Boone hit him with the rifle butt, a short, brutal swing that caught him behind the ear. The man dropped without a sound. Boone took his gun, his ammunition, kept moving. The second shooter heard something, called out softly, "Hayes, that you?" Boone stepped around the tree and put his rifle in the man's face. "Real quiet now. You make a sound, I pull this trigger. Nod if you understand." The man nodded, eyes wide with terror. "Where's Warwick?" The shooter pointed with a shaking hand. Other side of the clearing. "How many men total?" 9. "But you shot 2, and Hayes is down, so 6? Any of them good?" "What? Are they soldiers, gunslingers, or just ranch hands playing tough?" We're just working for Mr. Granger, man. We didn't sign up to fight no war." "Then leave. Tell the others to leave too. You're not getting paid enough for this." "Warwick won't let us. Says Mr. Granger will kill anyone who runs." "I'll kill anyone who stays. Your choice." He tied the man to the tree with his own belt, gagged him with a torn piece of shirt, and kept moving. From the cabin, Evelyn fired 3 quick shots. Good girl. The remaining shooters returned fire, still convinced they had them trapped. Boone used the distraction to close on the next position. This one was smarter, more alert. Former military, maybe, from the way he held his rifle and scanned his surroundings. He spotted Boone before Boone could get close. "Contact!" he shouted, bringing his weapon up. Boone dove behind a fallen log as bullets chewed into the wood. He rolled, came up firing, forced the shooter to duck. They traded shots for maybe 30 seconds. A vicious little firefight that seemed to last forever. Then Boone flanked him, got an angle, and put a round through the man's rifle, shattering the stock. The shooter drew his pistol, but Boone was already moving, closing the distance, and they crashed together in the snow. It was brutal and quick. The man was strong, well-trained, fought like he meant it. But Boone had size, fury, and 7 years of mountain living that had made him harder than stone. He got the shooter in a chokehold, held it until the man went limp. 3 down, 3 more somewhere in the trees, plus Warwick. "He's outside," someone shouted. "Callahan's outside the cabin." The element of surprise was gone. Boone ran for new cover as gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Bullets snapped through the air, kicked up snow around his feet. He made it behind a boulder, breathing hard, quickly checking himself for wounds. Nothing. Lucky. Warwick's voice cut through the chaos. "Fall back! Regroup on me! Everyone fall back!" Boone watched them retreat to a defensive position, pulling together near the edge of the clearing. 4 men, including Warwick, all of them looking rattled. This wasn't going the way they'd planned. "Callahan," Warwick shouted. "This is pointless. We got more men coming. You can't win." "Already am winning," Boone called back. "You're down 5 men and haven't even gotten inside the cabin. We don't need to get inside. We just need to wait you out. In a blizzard? Good luck with that." As if on cue, the wind picked up, carrying the first hints of new snow. The storm Boone had predicted was arriving early, the temperature already dropping fast. Warwick must have felt it too. He turned to the men with him, spoke quietly. Boone couldn't hear the words, but he recognized the body language. They were arguing. Some wanted to leave, get off the mountain before the weather trapped them. Others, probably the ones Granger was paying the most, wanted to finish the job. The argument ended when one of them broke from cover and charged the cabin. Boone didn't hesitate. He brought up his rifle, led the runner by a fraction, and fired. The bullet took the man in the chest. He stumbled, fell, didn't move again. The clearing went silent except for the wind. "That's 4 dead," Boone shouted. "How many more of you want to die for Silas Granger's money?" No answer. "He's using you, all of you. You think he'll share that gold if you find it? You think he'll let you live after you've seen where it's hidden?" "Shut up!" Warwick's voice was shaking now, the confidence gone. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know Granger watched my wife and son die and didn't lift a finger to help. I know he'll sacrifice every one of you before he risks himself. And I know none of you are walking off this mountain alive if you don't leave right now." More wind. The snow was falling harder, visibility dropping. Then one of Warwick's men stood up, hands raised. "I'm done. I'm not dying up here." "Sit down, you coward," Warwick snarled. "Shoot me if you want. I'm leaving." The man started walking toward the trail, moving fast, not looking back. Warwick's rifle came up. For a second, Boone thought he'd actually shoot his own man. Then the rifle lowered, and Warwick's shoulders sagged. "Anyone else?" Warwick asked bitterly. Another man stood, then the third. Both of them walked away without a word, disappearing into the thickening snow. That left Warwick alone. He stood there for a long moment, just staring at the cabin. Boone couldn't see his face from this distance, but he could imagine it. The rage, the humiliation, the knowledge that he'd failed. "This isn't over, Callahan," Warwick finally shouted. "Mr. Granger's not going to forget this. He'll send more men, better men. You can't hide up here forever." "I'm not hiding. I'm right here. You want another try? Come ahead." Warwick fired one last defiant shot toward the cabin, then turned and ran. Boone watched him go, making sure he was really leaving, then circled back to the cabin. Evelyn met him at the door, relief flooding her face. "You're alive." "Told you I'd try." "Are they gone?" "For now, but Warwick was right about one thing. Granger's going to send more. This was just the first wave." She looked past him at the clearing, at the bodies in the snow, and her face went pale. "How many did you—" "3 dead, 2 wounded. The rest ran." He moved past her, started checking the cabin for damage. Bullet holes in the walls, shattered windows, the roof punctured in a dozen places. Fixable, but it would take time. "We killed people," Evelyn said quietly. "They tried to kill us first. That doesn't make it feel better." Boone stopped, turned to face her. "Listen to me. Those men made their choice. They could have refused Granger's money, could have turned back when they saw what this was going to cost. They didn't. That's on them, not you. But if I wasn't here, if you weren't here, I'd be sitting in this cabin alone, waiting to die. At least now I've got a reason to fight." He gripped her shoulders gently. "Stop blaming yourself for other people's evil. You didn't ask for any of this." Tears were sliding down her face, but she nodded. The storm hit hard around noon, just as Boone had predicted. Snow fell so thick they couldn't see 10 feet beyond the windows. The temperature plummeted. Any tracks the attackers had left were erased within an hour. They spent the afternoon repairing what they could. Boone nailed boards over the broken windows, patched the roof with canvas and tar, reinforced the barricades. Evelyn cooked a meal from their dwindling supplies, boiled snow for water, kept the fire roaring. Night came early, the way it did in winter storms. They sat together by the hearth, exhausted, listening to the wind try to tear the mountain apart. "Tell me about the gold," Boone said. Evelyn looked up from her coffee. "What?" "The certificates everyone thinks you know about. Do you actually know where they are?" She was quiet for a long time. Maybe. Cade Riker. He was drunk one night, bragging to the other men about how smart he was, how the law would never find what they'd stolen. He mentioned a place, the Badlands, he called it. Said they'd hidden everything there, somewhere nobody would ever look. The Badlands cover hundreds of square miles. That's not much to go on. I know, but he said something else. He said they'd buried it under the bones of a giant. I didn't know what that meant until later, until after the marshals raided the camp. I was being questioned, and one of them mentioned an old story about the Badlands, about dinosaur fossils that settlers used to find there. Boone sat up straighter. Bones of a giant. There's a place about 30 miles south of here, in the deep Badlands. Prospectors found some kind of massive skeleton 20 years ago. They tried to dig it up, but it was too big, too deep. Eventually, they just left it. But people still talk about it. The giant's grave, they call it. And you think that's where the gold is? I think it's possible, but I've never been there, never tried to find it. Even if I did, what would I do with it? Turn it over to the law? They'd just give it back to Granger and the other victims of the robberies. Keep it for myself? I'd spend the rest of my life running from bounty hunters and thieves. So you've just been sitting on this information for a year, letting Granger torture you. What choice did I have? If I told him, he'd kill me. If I told the law, he'd still kill me. The only thing keeping me alive is that he thinks I might eventually crack and tell him where it is. Boone stared into the fire. We should go get it. What? The gold. We should go get it before Granger does. Are you insane? That's exactly what he wants. No, what he wants is for you to lead him to it. What I'm saying is, we go get it ourselves. Use it as leverage. Leverage for what? To make him leave you alone. We find those certificates. We've got proof that Granger financed the Riker gang. Why else would he be so desperate to get them back? We threaten to turn everything over to the federal marshals unless he backs off. Evelyn shook her head. You don't know Granger. He doesn't respond to threats. He responds to force. Then we give him force. But we do it smart, with insurance. This is crazy. Maybe. But staying here isn't working either. He's just going to keep sending men until one of them gets lucky. And winter's only going to get worse. We're running out of food, running out of time. She looked at him with those gray eyes, searching. Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's just because it's the right thing to do. Nobody risks their life for a stranger over some abstract sense of justice. Boone was silent for a long moment. Outside, the storm howled. You asked me earlier if it gets lonely up here, he said finally. Truth is, I've been lonely for 7 years. Not just alone. Lonely, missing the sound of another voice, another person moving through the cabin, missing having someone to talk to plan with, to care about. When Sarah and Daniel died, I thought I'd buried that part of myself with them, thought I was done with people forever. But then I saw you in that store, and I saw myself, someone who'd been beaten down, cast out, left to die by people who should have helped, and I couldn't just walk away. Not again. Evelyn's hand found his. I'm sorry about your family, about what this town did to them, to you. I'm sorry about your brother, about everything you've been through. They sat together in the firelight, hands clasped, while the storm raged outside and the future remained uncertain. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind 3 feet of fresh snow and air so cold it burned to breathe. Boone stepped outside to assess the damage. The clearing was empty now, the bodies buried under fresh powder. He'd need to deal with them eventually, but not today. He was checking the perimeter when he spotted the tracks, fresh ones coming up from the lower trail. Not as many as before, maybe 2 men, 3 at most, and they were moving carefully, avoiding the obvious approach. Scouts again. Or maybe just Granger's men regrouping. Boone followed the tracks to where they stopped at the edge of the clearing, near a cluster of rocks. Whoever had made them had spent time here, watching the cabin. He found cigarette butts in the snow, still fresh. They'd been here this morning, maybe an hour ago. He was turning to head back when he saw the package. It was wrapped in oilcloth, tied with twine, sitting on a rock like someone had left it deliberately. Boone approached carefully, rifle ready, looking for tripwires or other traps. Nothing. He opened the package. Inside was a note, written in elegant script on expensive paper. Mr. Callahan, I believe we've gotten off on the wrong foot. The unfortunate incident in town and yesterday's regrettable violence, have created unnecessary animosity between us. I would like to propose a meeting to discuss this matter like civilized men. I have no quarrel with you personally. My interest is solely in recovering property that was stolen from me and my associates. Miss Mercer has information I require, and I am prepared to compensate her handsomely for it. Once I have what I need, she is free to go wherever she wishes, with my word that no harm will come to her. I will be at the old Blackwell mine, 3 miles south of your position, tomorrow at noon. Come alone, or bring Miss Mercer, if you prefer. Let us end this unfortunate conflict before more blood is shed. Respectfully, Silas Granger Boone read it twice, then carried it back to the cabin. Evelyn's face went white when she saw the signature. He came up here himself? Or sent someone who can write pretty? Either way, he's trying a different approach. It's a trap. Probably. So we ignore it. Or we spring it. Boone set the letter on the table. He's right about one thing. This needs to end. And it won't end with us hiding in this cabin. So what do you want to do? I want to meet him, hear what he has to say, see if there's a way out of this that doesn't involve more killing. You said yourself he can't be trusted. I said he's a coward and a liar, but even cowards sometimes tell the truth when it serves them. And if he really just wants the location of the gold, maybe we can make a deal. Or maybe he'll shoot you the second you show up. That's why you're going to be watching from cover with a rifle. He tries anything, you put a bullet in him. She stared at him. You want me to be your backup? You're the only backup I've got. I told you I've never shot anyone. But you will if you have to. You proved that when you killed that deputy in my cabin's cellar during the fight. He saw her flinch at the memory. I know it's hard. I know you don't want to. But sometimes the only choice is between killing and dying, and I'd rather you choose the first one. Evelyn looked down at her hands. They were shaking again, the way they had in Miller's store that first day. I don't know if I can do this. You can. You're stronger than you think. How do you know? Because you're still here. After everything, the gang, the town, Granger, the siege, you're still standing. That takes strength most people don't have. She met his eyes. What if something goes wrong? What if he kills you? Then you run. Take smoke, head north into Wyoming. There's a settlement called Red Creek about 40 miles from here. Good people there. They'll help you. I'm not leaving you. If I'm dead, there's nothing you can do for me. Promise me you'll run. She didn't answer. Evelyn, promise me. Fine, she said finally. I promise. But you better not die, or I'll find a way to kill you myself. That got a laugh out of him, brief and unexpected. Deal. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Boone cleaned and oiled his weapons, made sure they had enough ammunition. Evelyn practiced with the rifle, shooting at targets Boone set up in the clearing. She wasn't great, but she wasn't terrible either. Good enough. That night, they barely slept. Morning came cold and clear, the sky a brutal blue. They ate a quick breakfast, gathered their gear, and headed out. The Blackwell mine was an old silver operation that had played out 20 years earlier. The entrance was boarded up, the structures around it collapsing under the weight of accumulated snow. It was the kind of place people avoided, dangerous, unstable, and supposedly haunted by the miners who died in a cave-in back in '48. Perfect spot for an ambush. Boone positioned Evelyn in the rocks above the mine entrance, gave her clear sight lines on the approach. Anyone shows up who isn't me or Granger, you shoot first and ask questions later. Understood? Understood. And if this goes bad, I know. Run north to Red Creek. You've told me 100 times. He looked at her for a long moment, memorizing her face, just in case. Then he turned and walked down to the mine. Silas Granger was already there, standing beside a black carriage that had no business being this far up a mountain road. He was exactly as Boone remembered from town, tall, thin, expensively dressed, with the kind of face that looked like it had never smiled without calculating the cost. 2 men stood with him, armed, professional, watching Boone approach with cold eyes. Mr. Callahan, Granger said pleasantly, thank you for coming. I was concerned you might not take my letter seriously. I'm here. Say what you came to say. Direct. I appreciate that. Granger gestured to the mine. Shall we talk inside? It's rather cold out here. We can talk right here. Very well. Granger's smile didn't waver. I'll be brief. I want to know where Cade Riker hid the stolen certificates. I believe Miss Mercer has this information. I'm prepared to pay $20,000 for it. And if she doesn't know, then I'm afraid we have a problem. You see, Mr. Callahan, I've invested a considerable amount of time and resources into recovering what was stolen from me. I don't intend to walk away empty-handed. Those robberies happened over 2 years ago. Why wait until now to make your move? Because until recently, I believed the certificates were lost forever. Then I learned that Miss Mercer spent months with the Riker gang before their demise. Surely in all that time, Cade Riker mentioned something. Surely she knows more than she's admitted. Boone studied him. You really want that gold bad. Makes me wonder why. It's my property. Is it? Or is it evidence of something else, something you'd rather keep buried? Granger's smile finally slipped. I don't know what you're implying. I'm implying that a man doesn't finance his own robberies unless he's got a damn good reason. And I'm thinking those certificates would prove you were behind the Riker gang the whole time. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Granger started laughing. It wasn't a pleasant sound. It was the laugh of a man who'd just been caught but didn't care because he knew he'd already won. Oh, Mr. Callahan, he said when he could speak again. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Yes, I financed them. I planned the robberies, laundered the money, even helped them pick their targets. And yes, if those certificates were to surface with my handwriting on the transfer documents, it would be inconvenient. Inconvenient. That's what you call getting hanged for conspiracy to commit murder? Who would believe it? I'm the most respected man in Black Hollow. I own the bank, the land office, half the businesses in town. The territorial governor is a personal friend. Even if someone found evidence, even if they brought charges, do you really think a jury would convict me? The federal marshals might have something to say about that. The marshals are busy chasing actual criminals. They're not going to waste time on wild accusations from a disgraced woman and a hermit who shot a deputy. Granger's face hardened. You have one chance, Callahan. Tell me where those certificates are, or I'll bury you and Miss Mercer so deep nobody will ever find the bodies. That's your offer? Threats? That's reality. You can fight me, but you can't win. I have money, power, and patience. What do you have? A broken-down cabin and misplaced chivalry? He gestured to his men. These gentlemen are former Pinkerton agents. They've killed more men than you've met in your entire life. And there are 20 more waiting in town, ready to march up this mountain the moment I give the word. Boone's hand moved toward his gun. Both of Granger's men drew instantly, their pistols trained on him with professional precision. Don't, Granger said softly. You're fast, Mr. Callahan, but you're not faster than 2 bullets. From her position in the rocks, Evelyn watched through the rifle's sights. Her finger was on the trigger, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. 1 shot. That's all it would take. 1 shot and Granger would be dead. But so would Boone. The moment she fired, those 2 gunmen would kill him. She'd seen men like them before, in the Riker camp. Professionals who killed without hesitation or remorse. Her hands were shaking again. Last chance, Granger was saying. Where are the certificates? Boone smiled. It was a cold, terrible smile. Go to hell, Granger sighed. I was hoping you'd be reasonable. Gentlemen, if you would... The gunshot came from behind Granger. One of his men dropped instantly, a hole in his back. The second spun toward the source of the shot, and Evelyn finally pulled her trigger. Her bullet caught him in the chest, punching him backward into the snow. Granger dove for the carriage. Boone's gun was out now, firing at the carriage, at the horses, trying to stop Granger's escape. But the man was already inside, shouting orders to someone hidden within. The carriage lurched forward. More gunfire erupted from inside it. A third shooter, maybe a fourth. Bullets tore through the air around Boone. He threw himself behind a boulder, returned fire, but the carriage was already moving, racing back down the mountain road. Then Evelyn saw the rider. He'd been hidden in the trees, waiting for this exact moment. Now he broke from cover, rifle raised, aiming at Boone's exposed position. Evelyn didn't think. She just fired. The rider fell from his horse, crashed into a snowdrift, and didn't move. Silence. Boone emerged from cover, looking up at her position. She waved, showing she was okay. He waved back. They'd survived. But the war with Silas Granger had just begun. Evelyn was still shaking when they made it back to the cabin. Not from cold, though the temperature had dropped again. Not from fear, though plenty of that remained. She was shaking because she'd killed 2 men in the span of 5 minutes, and no amount of justification could make that feel normal. "You did good," Boone said, building up the fire. "Saved my life. I killed them. You stopped them from killing me. There's a difference." "Is there?" She sat heavily in the chair by the window, still gripping the rifle like it might crawl away if she let go. One second they were alive, and the next they weren't. Because of me. Boone poured whiskey into 2 tin cups, handed her one. "Drink." She did, coughing as the liquid burned down her throat. "How do you live with it? The killing?" "I remind myself that they chose to be there. Nobody forced those men to take Granger's money. Nobody forced them to come up this mountain with guns. They made their choices, and those choices had consequences." That's the same thing Granger probably tells himself, that the people he hurts made choices too. "No." Boone's voice was hard. "Granger hunts victims. He targets people who can't fight back, people who are already broken. Those men you shot today? They were professionals with guns coming to murder us. That's not the same thing at all." Evelyn drank more whiskey, felt the warmth spread through her chest. "He's not going to stop. You know that, right? After today, after we killed his men, he's going to come at us with everything he has." "I know. So what do we do?" Boone was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. "We go to the Badlands, find those certificates before Granger does." "That's insane. We barely survived 1 ambush. You want to walk into the middle of nowhere with Granger hunting us? It's the only play we've got left. Right now we're reacting to him. He attacks, we defend. He threatens, we hide. That's not sustainable. Eventually he'll wear us down, or the winter will, or we'll just make a mistake and he'll kill us. And going after the gold changes that how? Because right now Granger's chasing a ghost. He thinks you might know where the certificates are, but he's not sure. That uncertainty is the only thing keeping you alive. If we actually find them, if we have them in our possession, we have leverage, real leverage." Evelyn set down her cup. "You're talking about blackmail. I'm talking about survival. We find those certificates, we've got proof Granger financed the Riker gang. We threaten to turn it over to the federal marshals unless he backs off permanently. He'll kill us anyway. The second we hand over that evidence, we're dead. Not if we're smart about it. We make copies, hide them in different places, arrange for them to be delivered to the marshals if anything happens to us. We make killing us more dangerous than leaving us alone." She wanted to argue, wanted to find holes in his logic. But the terrible truth was, he was right. Staying here meant slow death. Running meant faster death. Frozen in a winter storm or shot in the back by Granger's hired guns. The only option that gave them any real chance was finding those certificates first. "The Badlands are 30 miles south," she said finally. "In good weather, on a good trail, that's 2 days of hard riding. In winter, through snow with people hunting us? Could be a week, maybe more. Then we'd better start packing." They spent the next hour gathering supplies. Boone took inventory of their food stores, selected what they could carry. Dried meat, hardtack, coffee, beans. Not much, but enough for a week if they were careful. He loaded ammunition, checked his weapons, made sure everything was in working order. Evelyn prepared warmer clothes, extra blankets, the medical supplies Boone kept for emergencies. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory from months of being forced to serve the Riker gang. She'd learned then how to pack for survival, how to prepare for the worst. "We leave at first light," Boone said. "Should give us a few hours before Granger realizes we're gone." "You think he's watching the cabin? I'd bet on it. But his men won't be close, not after today. They'll be positioned down the mountain, where they can see anyone coming or going, but stay out of rifle range." "So how do we get past them?" "The North Trail. It's steeper, harder, but it circles around the back of the ridge. If we move carefully, stay in the tree cover, we should be able to slip past without being seen." Evelyn looked out the window at the darkening sky. "And if we can't? If they spot us? Then we ride fast and hope Smoke's got enough in him to outrun whatever they're riding." It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all they had. That night, neither of them slept well. Evelyn dozed in fits, jerking awake at every sound. Boone kept watch by the window, rifle across his knees, eyes scanning the darkness for movement that never came. Around 3 in the morning, Evelyn gave up on sleep and joined him. Can't rest? Boone asked quietly. Keep seeing their faces. The men I shot. That'll fade eventually. Does it? Or do you just get used to it? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. They sat together in the darkness, listening to the cabin creak and settle. Outside, snow had started falling again, light flurries that dusted the clearing in fresh white. Tell me about the giant's grave, Boone said. What exactly are we looking for? Evelyn gathered her thoughts. From what I heard, it's in a box canyon deep in the Badlands. The prospectors who found the skeleton were trying to reach a silver vein that supposedly ran through the area. They came across these massive bones sticking out of the rock face. Leg bones, spine, skull, something enormous. They tried to dig it out, but the whole thing was embedded in solid stone. Eventually they gave up and left. And Riker knew about this place. He grew up around here. His father was one of those prospectors, apparently. Died in a cave-in trying to reach that silver. Riker knew the Badlands like most people know their own yard. So we're looking for a box canyon with dinosaur bones visible in the rock. That's all I've got. Riker never said exactly where, never drew a map. Just mentioned it that one time when he was drunk. Might be enough. Boone stood, moved to a shelf where he kept old maps. He spread one across the table, studied it by lamplight. The southern Badlands. Used to be a few mining operations down there, back before the veins played out. Most of them are marked on here. Evelyn leaned over the map. The Badlands were a sprawling maze of canyons, ravines, and rocky outcrops. Dozens of small marks indicated old claims and abandoned mines. How do we know which one? She asked. We don't. We'll have to search. His finger traced potential routes. If we come in from the east, follow this dry creek bed, it'll take us through the main canyon network. From there we can branch out, check each side canyon until we find the right one. That could take days. It will take days. And that's assuming we don't run into Granger's men, wild animals, or weather that kills us first. You really know how to sell an idea. That got a brief smile from him. Just being honest. This is going to be hard, dangerous, and we might fail. But it's still better than waiting here to die. Dawn came gray and cold. They loaded Smoke and the mule with their supplies, distributed the weight carefully. Boone took a last look around the cabin, the home he'd built with his own hands, the sanctuary that had kept him alive through 7 brutal winters. We'll come back, Evelyn said quietly. Maybe. We will, because I'm not dying in some frozen canyon, and neither are you. He looked at her, saw the determination in her gray eyes, and believed her. They took the North Trail as planned, moving slowly through deep snow. The path was steep and treacherous, barely wide enough for the horses. More than once, Smoke's hooves slipped on ice, sending rocks tumbling down the slope. But they made progress. By mid-morning, they'd circled around the back of Raven Ridge and descended into a narrow valley that ran parallel to the main route. Boone kept them in the tree line, avoiding open ground, stopping frequently to listen and watch. No signs of pursuit. Maybe they didn't see us, Evelyn whispered. Or maybe they're just following at a distance. You always this optimistic? Just experienced. They rode for 3 hours before stopping to rest the horses. Boone climbed a rocky outcrop, used his spyglass to scan their back trail. Nothing moved in the white landscape. No riders, no smoke from campfires, no tracks, but their own. I think we're clear, he said, climbing down. For now. They pushed on through the afternoon, the terrain gradually changing from mountain forest to high desert scrubland. The snow thinned, replaced by frozen earth and scattered sagebrush. The temperature dropped further as the sun sank toward the western peaks. By nightfall, they'd covered maybe 15 miles. Boone found a sheltered spot among some rocks, built a small fire that wouldn't be visible from a distance. They ate cold meat and hardtack, drank coffee that tasted like mud. How far tomorrow? Evelyn asked. If the weather holds, we might reach the eastern edge of the Badlands by sundown. Then the real searching begins. And if it doesn't hold, then we find shelter and wait it out. She pulled her blanket tighter. Even with the fire, the cold was brutal. I hate winter. Winter doesn't care. That's comforting. Want me to lie? Tell you it'll be warm and easy? No, I want you to keep being honest, even when it's terrifying. Boone added another piece of wood to the fire. You're doing good, you know. Most people would have broken by now. I feel pretty broken. You're still here, still fighting, that counts. They took turns on watch that night. Boone slept first, or tried to, while Evelyn sat with the rifle and listened to the darkness. Every sound seemed magnified. The wind through the rocks, the distant cry of a coyote, the snap of the fire. Around midnight, she heard something else. Hoofbeats. Faint, far off, but unmistakable. Multiple horses, moving fast across hard ground. "Boone," she whispered urgently. He was awake instantly, gun in hand. "What?" "Riders, coming from the north." They killed the fire, kicked dirt over the embers, moved the horses deeper into the rocks. Boone climbed to a vantage point, watching the darkness. The riders appeared maybe 5 minutes later. 6 of them, carrying torches, moving in a loose line like they were searching for something. They were still a quarter-mile away, but they were heading in the right direction. "They're tracking us," Boone said quietly. "How?" "We covered our trail." "Not well enough, apparently." He watched the riders pass, counting them, noting their weapons and horses. Professional again. Granger wasn't sending ranch hands anymore. He was sending killers. The riders disappeared into the darkness to the south. "They're ahead of us now," Evelyn said. "Yeah." "So what do we do?" Boone thought for a moment. "We change direction. Head west for a day, then circle back south. It'll take longer, but it might throw them off. Or it might just delay the inevitable. You got a better idea?" She didn't. They broke camp before dawn, riding west through country that got rougher with every mile. The high desert gave way to broken rock and twisting ravines. Navigation became guesswork, the old maps only partially accurate. By noon, they were lost. Not hopelessly lost. Not yet. But the landmarks Boone had been using to navigate were gone, replaced by endless rock formations that all looked the same. The ravines twisted and doubled back, creating dead ends and false paths. "We need higher ground," Boone said. "Somewhere I can see the lay of the land." They found a mesa after another hour of riding. Boone climbed it while Evelyn waited below with the horses. The view from the top was stunning and terrifying. Miles of badlands stretching in every direction, a maze of stone and shadow. And somewhere in the distance, to the northeast, a thin column of smoke. Boone descended quickly. "Campfire," he said. "Maybe 3 miles from here." "Granger's men? Who else? Nobody comes out here in winter unless they've got a damn good reason." "So they're still tracking us. Or they're waiting, setting up positions, blocking the routes they think we'll take." Evelyn's face was pale. "We're running out of options." "Not yet. Come on." They rode hard for the rest of the day, keeping to the low ground, avoiding anywhere they might be silhouetted against the sky. Boone's sense of direction was good, but the twisting ravines played tricks, turned them around, made progress nearly impossible. As the sun set, they found themselves in a box canyon with walls too steep to climb, dead end. "Back," Boone said, already turning smoke around. But as they retreated, they heard voices echoing off the stone. Men, talking casually, coming from the direction they'd just traveled. "There," Evelyn pointed to a narrow crack in the canyon wall. "Can we fit?" "Horses won't." "Then we leave them." It was a brutal choice. Without the horses, they'd be traveling on foot through hostile country in the middle of winter. But if they stayed, they'd be trapped. Boone made the decision fast. "Grab what you can carry, food, water, ammunition, leave everything else." They worked frantically, pulling essential supplies from the saddlebags, distributing weight. Boone gave Smoke and the mule a final pat, then slapped them away, sending them running back down the canyon. Maybe Granger's men would chase the horses. Maybe they'd waste time searching the wrong direction. Maybe. They squeezed through the crack in the wall, found themselves in a narrow passage barely wide enough for one person. It twisted upward at a sharp angle, the walls pressing close enough to make breathing difficult. Behind them, the voices grew louder, shouts, the sound of horses. "They found our camp," Boone whispered. "Keep moving." They climbed in near darkness, hands and feet scrambling for purchase on slick rock. Evelyn's pack caught on a narrow point and she had to twist violently to free it. Her rifle clattered against stone, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The voices stopped. Then boots on rock, moving fast. "Go," Boone hissed. Evelyn climbed faster, her lungs burning, muscles screaming. The passage seemed endless, always rising, always narrowing. She could hear Boone behind her, and behind him, the sounds of pursuit. Then the passage opened up. They emerged onto a narrow ledge high on the canyon wall. The sun had set completely now, stars appearing in the darkening sky. Below them, torches moved in the darkness. At least 4 men, maybe more, searching the canyon floor. "There's nowhere to go," Evelyn said quietly. The ledge ran maybe 20 feet in either direction, then ended at sheer walls. Boone studied their position. "We go up." "Up where?" "There's nothing but—" She stopped. 'Cause he was right. Above them, barely visible in the dying light, was a series of natural handholds leading to what looked like another ledge, and maybe, possibly, a way over the canyon rim. "You've got to be kidding. Can you climb? In the dark? With a pack? Are you insane?" "Evelyn," he gripped her shoulders, "we don't have a choice. Either we climb or we wait here for them to find us. And when they do, they'll kill us. You know that." She looked up at the impossible cliff face, then back at Boone. "If I fall—" "You won't fall. I'll be right behind you, every step." "You don't know that." "I do, because I'm not losing you. Not after everything." He released her shoulders. "Now climb." She climbed. Every handhold was a gamble. Every foothold threatened to crumble. The pack threatened to pull her backward into space. But she climbed, one move at a time, not thinking about the drop below, or the darkness, or the very real possibility that she would lose her grip and fall. Boone climbed behind her, his voice a steady presence. "Left hand, 2 feet up. Good. Now right foot on that crack." "You've got it." Below them, the searchers had found the narrow passage. Torchlight spilled through the crack in the wall. Shouts of discovery. "They're coming," Evelyn gasped. "Don't look down, just climb." Her hand found the ledge. She pulled herself up and over, collapsed on solid stone, breathing so hard she thought her lungs might burst. Boone appeared beside her seconds later. They were on top of the canyon rim. "Keep moving," Boone said, hauling her to her feet. "They'll be up here in minutes." They ran through the darkness, stumbling over rocks, following the rim as it curved away from the canyon. Behind them, the first pursuer emerged onto the ledge they'd just left. A gunshot cracked the night. The bullet whined off stone somewhere to their left. They dropped into a shallow depression, pressing flat. More shots, wild and angry, searching for targets they couldn't see. Then voices, arguing, someone saying it was too dark, too dangerous to pursue further tonight. Another voice. Boone recognized it as one of the men from the Blackwell mine, saying Granger would have their heads if they let the quarry escape. Finally, the decision to make camp and resume at first light. Boone and Evelyn lay in the depression for another hour, not daring to move, barely breathing. When the voices finally faded and the torches withdrew, they crawled out and continued north. They walked through the night, putting distance between themselves and Granger's men. The terrain was treacherous in the darkness, but stopping meant being caught at dawn with nowhere to hide. Around 3 a.m, Evelyn simply stopped walking. "I can't," she said. "My legs won't move anymore." Boone could see she was done. Her face was gray with exhaustion, her movements uncoordinated. They needed rest, just a few hours. He found an overhang in a cluster of rocks, barely large enough for 2 people. They crawled inside, huddled together for warmth. Evelyn was asleep in seconds. Boone tried to stay awake to keep watch, but his body had other ideas. The exhaustion caught up with him, and he slipped into darkness. He woke to Evelyn shaking him. "Boone! Boone, wake up!" Sunlight streamed into the overhang. Late morning, maybe noon. He'd slept for hours. "What?" "Look." She pointed down into the valley below their position. Boone crawled forward, looked over the edge, and saw the box canyon. It was enormous, maybe half a mile across, the walls rising 300 feet on all sides. And there, visible even from this distance, were bones. Massive white bones jutting from the rock face like the skeleton of some ancient giant trying to claw its way out of the earth. They'd found it. The giant's grave. "That's it," Evelyn whispered. "That's the place Riker described." Boone studied the canyon floor through his spyglass. There were several old mining structures, a collapsed shaft house, rusted equipment, wooden frames that had weathered to gray. And near the base of the cliff, with the bones, something that might have been a cave or tunnel entrance. That's where they'd hide it, he said. Somewhere in those old mine workings. How do we get down there? He scanned the canyon rim. There had to be a way. The miners who'd worked here must have had some kind of trail. He found it on the western side, a series of switchbacks carved into the rock face. Steep, dangerous, but passable. There. But we need to move fast. Granger's men will be looking for us, and once they realize we're not on the canyon rim anymore, they'll figure out where we went. They gathered their remaining supplies and started down. The descent took 2 hours of careful climbing. By the time they reached the canyon floor, both of them were scraped and bruised, their hands raw from gripping rough stone. But they were here. The giant's grave opened before them like something from a fever dream. The bones were even more massive up close. A leg bone as thick as a tree trunk, vertebrae the size of wagon wheels. Whatever creature this had been, it was like nothing that walked the earth now. Where do we start? Evelyn asked. Boone moved toward the mine entrance. It was partially collapsed, the wooden supports rotted and dangerous. But there was a gap, maybe 3 feet wide, leading into darkness. In there. Of course it is. They lit a torch from Boone's pack and entered the mine. The tunnel was narrow, low-ceilinged, shored up with ancient timbers that groaned ominously. The air smelled of earth and decay. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness ahead. They followed the tunnel for maybe 100 feet. Then it opened into a larger chamber. The torchlight revealed old mining equipment, picks, shovels, ore cars rusted to orange lace, and in the back corner, a wooden crate. Evelyn moved toward it, but Boone caught her arm. Wait, could be a trap. He approached carefully, checking for tripwires or pressure plates. Nothing. The crate was just sitting there, covered in dust, undisturbed for years. Boone pried it open. Inside were documents, hundreds of them. Gold certificates, bearer bonds, transfer papers. And there, among them, papers with Silas Granger's signature authorizing transfers to known associates of the Riker gang. This is it, Evelyn breathed. This is everything. Boone gathered the documents carefully, started packing them into his canvas bag. This proves Granger financed the robberies. With this, we can... The gunshot echoed through the mine like thunder. Boone felt the bullet hit before he heard the shot, a sledgehammer blow to his left shoulder that spun him around and dropped him to his knees. Evelyn screamed. Silas Granger stepped out of the shadows, a pistol in his hand and murder in his eyes. "Did you really think," he said quietly, "that I wouldn't be watching this place?" Blood spread across Boone's shirt in a dark stain. He pressed his right hand against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding, but the pain was incredible. The bullet had gone clean through, which was good and terrible at the same time. Good because it wasn't lodged in bone. Terrible because he was bleeding from both sides. "Boone!" Evelyn moved toward him, but Granger's gun swung in her direction. "Stay where you are, Miss Mercer. I'd hate to shoot you before we've had a chance to talk." "You son of a—" "Language." Granger's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "I know you're upset, but there's no need for vulgarity." Boone forced himself to focus through the pain. Granger wasn't alone. 2 more men emerged from the shadows behind him, the same professional killers from the Blackwell mine, both armed, both watching Boone and Evelyn with dead eyes. "How long?" Boone managed. "How long have you been here?" 3 days. Granger holstered his pistol, confident now that his men had the situation under control. "I knew eventually Miss Mercer would lead me here. All I had to do was wait. The men I sent after you, they were never meant to catch you. They were meant to drive you exactly where I needed you to go." Evelyn's face went white. "The riders last night, the chase. You planned all of it." "Of course. You're both predictable. The brave mountain man and his damsel in distress. I knew you'd come for the certificates. Knew you'd think you were being so clever. And here we are." He gestured to the crate. "Everything I need, exactly where I left it." "Where you left it," Boone said. Did you think Cade Riker was smart enough to hide evidence this well? Please. I told him exactly where to put it, chose this location myself. Remote, difficult to access, and with a convenient story about prospectors and dinosaur bones to make it memorable. Perfect insurance, in case I ever needed leverage. "Against who?" Evelyn asked. "The gang was dead. What leverage did you need?" Granger smiled. "Against anyone who might ask inconvenient questions. Federal marshals, territorial investigators, rival businessmen. With these documents hidden away, I could always threaten to reveal my partner's involvement if they came after me. Mutually assured destruction, you might say. Except your partners were all killed in the raid. A fortunate coincidence left me as the sole survivor, the only one who knew where the evidence was hidden. He moved to the crate, started gathering documents. And now I'll destroy it all, and no one will ever prove what I did. Boone tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't support him. The blood loss was worse than he'd thought. The world tilted sideways, went gray at the edges. "Don't die yet, Mr. Callahan," Granger said without looking at him. "I need you conscious for what comes next." "What comes next is you hang for murder," Evelyn said. Her hand was moving slowly toward her coat, where she'd hidden the revolver. One of Granger's men noticed. "The woman's armed." "Of course she is. Take it from her." The man moved forward, grabbed Evelyn roughly, yanked the gun from her pocket. She struggled, tried to fight, but he was too strong. He shoved her against the wall hard enough to knock the wind from her lungs. "Careful," Granger said mildly. "I need her alive. For now." Boone's vision was clearing slightly. He cataloged their situation. 2 armed professionals between them and the exit. Granger gathering evidence. His own rifle was somewhere on the ground, too far to reach. His pistol was still holstered, but drawing it with his left hand while his right tried to stop the bleeding would be nearly impossible. They were trapped. "Why keep us alive at all?" Boone asked, trying to buy time. "You've got what you want. Why not just kill us and be done with it?" "Because I'm not a monster, Mr. Callahan. I'm a businessman, and businessmen understand the value of tying up loose ends properly." Granger finished packing the documents into a leather satchel. "You see, when you two disappear, people will ask questions. The territorial marshal in Denver has already shown some interest in Miss Mercer's case. If you both simply vanish, he might investigate. So you're going to make it look like an accident. Better. I'm going to make it look like justice." Granger nodded to his men. "Bring them outside, carefully. I don't want the mountain man bleeding out before we're ready." The professionals hauled Boone to his feet. Pain exploded through his shoulder, so intense he nearly blacked out. They half dragged, half carried him through the tunnel and out into the canyon. The sun was past its peak now, shadows lengthening across the stone. Granger's men had set up a small camp near the canyon wall. Bedrolls, supplies, horses tied to a makeshift picket line. They'd been here for days, just as he'd said, waiting for their prey to walk into the trap. Boone was dropped near the camp. Evelyn was forced to sit beside him. One of the professionals tied her hands behind her back with practiced efficiency. "Here's what's going to happen," Granger said, standing over them like a judge pronouncing sentence. "In about an hour, my men and I will ride out of this canyon. We'll return to Black Hollow with a tragic story. We tracked you both here, tried to negotiate a peaceful surrender, but the notorious Boone Callahan, a man who'd already shot a deputy and killed several of my employees, chose violence instead. In the ensuing gunfight, both of you were killed. Your bodies will be found here, along with evidence of the Riker gang's stolen certificates, which you'd obviously come to claim for yourselves." "No one will believe that," Evelyn said. "Everyone will believe it. The great mountain man, fallen from grace, teaming up with a criminal woman to steal a fortune. It's a perfect story. Tragic, really, but justice was served." He smiled. "The territorial marshal might ask a few questions, but with both of you dead and no evidence to contradict my account, the case will close quickly." "Except we'll be alive to contradict you," Boone said. "No, Mr. Callahan, you won't." Granger pulled out a stick of dynamite. "This mine is old, unstable. The timbers are rotten, the shafts are flooded. A terrible shame, but these things happen. You two took shelter inside, perhaps to escape my men, and then tragedy struck. A collapse caused by your own carelessness. The entrance sealed, tons of rock burying you forever." He turned the dynamite over in his hands. "Your bodies will never be found, but everyone will assume you died down there, another victim of the Badlands' treacherous mines." Evelyn's face had gone pale. "You're going to bury us alive." "I'm going to bury your bodies. You'll be dead first, I promise. I'm not cruel." "You're worse than the Riker gang ever was," she said. "At least they were honest about being killers. You hide behind respectability while doing the same things." "I do what's necessary to survive in a harsh world, Miss Mercer, the same as everyone else. I'm just better at it." Granger handed the dynamite to one of his men. "Place charges at the main support timbers, enough to bring down the entrance and seal the shaft." The man took the dynamite and headed toward the mine. The other professional kept his rifle trained on Boone and Evelyn. Granger knelt beside them, his face close. If it's any consolation, you made me work harder than most. That business at the Blackwell mine, the chase through the canyon, you cost me several good men. I respect that in a way. Go to hell, Boone said through clenched teeth. Eventually, I'm sure. But not today. He stood, brushed dust from his expensive coat. Any last words? Final confessions? Now's the time. Evelyn looked at Boone and something passed between them. A understanding, an acceptance of what was coming. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I'm sorry I brought this down on you. Don't be. Best thing that happened to me in 7 years. She almost smiled at that. You're a terrible liar. I mean it. The professional returned from the mine. Charges set. 3 minutes once I light the fuse. Granger nodded. Do it, then get the horses ready. The man struck a match. That's when Boone moved. He'd been working at the ropes binding Evelyn's wrists, using the fingers of his good hand to loosen the knots while keeping his body positioned to hide what he was doing. The blood from his wound had made the rope slick, easier to manipulate. Now, as the professional's attention focused on lighting the fuse, Boone pulled Evelyn's hands free. She grabbed the knife from the boot of the guard standing over them, the one who'd taken her gun, and drove it into the man's thigh. He screamed, stumbled back. Boone threw himself at the man's legs, brought him down hard. They crashed together into the dirt, the guard's rifle flying free. Evelyn scrambled for the weapon. The other professional was running back from the mine, drawing his pistol. Granger was shouting orders, backing toward the horses. Evelyn brought up the rifle, fired. The shot went wide, but it was close enough to make the running man dive for cover. Boone grappled with the wounded guard, fighting for control of his pistol. The man was strong, trained, fighting through the pain of the knife wound. They rolled across the ground, trading punches, each trying to gain an advantage. The wounded guard got his hands around Boone's throat. Pressure. Darkness creeping in at the edges of Boone's vision. His wounded shoulder screaming as he tried to break the hold. Then a gunshot, very close. The guard's grip loosened. He slumped sideways, a hole in his chest. Evelyn stood over them, the revolver she'd taken smoking in her hand. "We have to go!" she shouted. "The dynamite!" She hauled Boone to his feet. He grabbed the dead guard's rifle, turned toward where the other professional had taken cover. But the man was already down, clutching his leg. Not dead, but out of the fight. Granger was on horseback now, galloping toward the canyon entrance. The satchel with the documents was tied to his saddle. "He's getting away," Evelyn said. "Let him go. We need to—" The explosion cut off his words. The mine entrance erupted in fire and smoke. Rock and timber flew through the air like shrapnel. The blast wave knocked them both flat, ears ringing, dust and debris raining down. When Boone could see again, the mine was gone. Just a pile of rubble where the entrance had been, smoke rising from the collapsed shaft. "Move!" He pulled Evelyn toward the horses. The animals were panicking, trying to break free of their picket line. Boone cut them loose, grabbed the reins of the nearest one. Behind them, more rumbling. The dynamite had destabilized more than just the mine entrance. Cracks were spreading through the canyon wall where the giant bones protruded. Whole sections of rock face were shifting, groaning. "It's all coming down," Evelyn said in horror. She was right. The explosion had triggered something catastrophic. The entire cliff face was beginning to collapse, tons of ancient stone sliding free, the giant skeleton disappearing in an avalanche of rock and dust. They mounted the horse together and rode for the canyon exit. The world was ending behind them. Rock crashed and tumbled, the sound like continuous thunder. The horse ran flat out, terrified, barely under control. They cleared the canyon just as the final collapse hit. Boone looked back to see the entire eastern wall come down, filling the box canyon with millions of tons of debris. The giant's grave disappeared in a cloud of dust that rose hundreds of feet into the air. When the dust finally began to settle, there was nothing left but rubble. The mine, the bones, the evidence, all buried under so much rock it would take 100 men 100 years to dig it out. And somewhere ahead of them, Silas Granger was riding hard for Black Hollow with the only proof of his crimes. Evelyn slumped against Boone's back. "We lost. He won." "Not yet." Boone turned the horse north. "We're not dead, and he doesn't know that. That gives us an advantage. We have no evidence, no weapons except what we took from his men, and you're bleeding from a bullet hole. What advantage? Surprise. He thinks we're buried in that canyon, which means he'll be confident, careless, and that's when we'll hit him. With what? How? Boone, look at yourself. You need a doctor. He was looking at himself. The blood had soaked through his shirt, was running down his arm. The pain was constant now, a deep throb that made thinking difficult. She was right. He needed medical attention soon, or the wound would kill him. But they couldn't go back to Black Hollow. Not yet. Not while Granger controlled the town. The federal marshal, Boone said, the one in Denver who investigated your case. You said he showed interest. Marshal Garrett. But Denver's 100 miles from here. You won't make it that far, not with that wound. We don't go to Denver. We send him a message. Get him to come to us. How? Telegraph office in Red Creek. It's only 40 miles north. We can make that. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Red Creek is where you told me to run if things went bad. You know people there? I know one person, Doc Warren. He's a drunk and a gambler, but he can remove a bullet and keep his mouth shut. They rode through the afternoon, following game trails and dry creek beds, staying off the main routes. The horse was strong, one of Granger's own, bred for endurance. But even so, it was suffering under the double load and the brutal pace. Boone's vision started going gray around the edges again. He could feel himself slipping in and out of consciousness, only Evelyn's arms around his waist keeping him in the saddle. Stay with me, she kept saying. Boone, stay awake. We're almost there. But they weren't. Red Creek was still hours away, and the sun was setting. The temperature was dropping fast, the way it did in the high desert. Without shelter, without fire, they wouldn't survive the night. Have to... Stop. Boone's words were slurred. Find shelter. Evelyn was crying now. He could hear it in her voice. No, no stopping. You stop, you die. Already dying. No, you're not. I won't let you. She kicked the horse harder, drove it faster. The animal was exhausted, foam flecking its mouth, but it kept running. Darkness fell. The stars came out cold and bright. Evelyn could barely see the trail ahead. All she could do was trust the horse to keep moving forward, keep putting distance between them and death. Then, ahead in the darkness, lights. Red Creek. It wasn't much of a town, maybe 24 buildings clustered around a crossroads, but it was civilization, safety, help. Evelyn rode straight down the main street, not caring who saw, not caring about subtlety. She stopped in front of a building with a painted sign that read, Medical Services, Dr. E. Warren. She half fell off the horse, pounded on the door. Help! I need help! Someone's been shot! The door opened. A middle-aged man with gray hair and whiskey on his breath looked at her with bleary eyes. Doc Warren? That's what they tell me. Who's shot? Him. She gestured to Boone, who was barely upright in the saddle, more unconscious than not. Warren's expression changed. He whistled sharply, and 2 men emerged from the saloon across the street. Get him inside. Gently. Now. They carried Boone into the doctor's office, laid him on a table. Warren lit more lamps, started cutting away the blood-soaked shirt. Through and through, he muttered. That's good. But he's lost a lot of blood. When did this happen? This morning. Maybe 6 hours ago. 6 hours on horseback with a wound like this? He should be dead. He's stubborn. Warren almost smiled. I can see that. He looked at Evelyn closely. You're the woman from Black Hollow, the one everyone says was with the Riker gang. I wasn't with them. I was their prisoner. And right now, Silas Granger is trying to kill both of us because we found proof he financed that gang. The doctor's hands paused for just a moment, then continued working. Granger, that explains a few things. You know him? Everyone in the territory knows him. Rich, powerful, mean as a snake. He began cleaning Boone's wound. If you've got proof against him, you should take it to the marshals in Denver. He has the proof. We had it, but he took it. Now we need to get word to Marshal Garrett. Tell him what happened. Telegraph office is closed for the night. Opens at dawn. Can you get it open sooner? I'm a doctor, not a telegraph operator. Please. Evelyn gripped his arm. Granger thinks we're dead, but when he realizes we're not, he'll come after us. He has men, guns, money. We need the law on our side before he finds us. Warren studied her face. Whatever he saw there convinced him. All right, I'll wake up Morton, get him to send your message. But your friend here isn't going anywhere for at least a few days. Maybe longer. That wound needs time to heal. We don't have a few days. Then he'll die on the trail. Your choice. It wasn't really a choice at all. Doc Warren worked through the night, cleaning and stitching Boone's wound, pumping him full of laudanum to manage the pain. By dawn, Boone was still unconscious but stable. Breathing regularly, color returning to his face. Evelyn sat beside him, holding his hand, watching the sunrise through the window. Warren brought her coffee. Message is sent. Marshal Garrett should receive it by this afternoon. If he responds immediately, he could be here in 2 days, maybe 3. And if Granger gets here first, then we'd better be ready for a fight. The doctor sat down heavily. I served in the war back when I was young and stupid, fought at Shiloh. After that, I swore I'd never pick up a gun again. But for what Granger did, financing those raids, getting people killed, framing you, I might make an exception. You believe me? My sister lived in Black Hollow. She died in one of those robberies, shot by Cade Riker himself while she was working at the bank. Warren's voice was tight. If Granger put Riker up to it, if he's responsible for her death, then yes. I believe you, and I'll help you any way I can. Evelyn felt tears burning her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We've got a long wait ahead, and Granger's not the type to leave loose ends. The wait was 3 days. 3 days of Boone healing slowly, fever coming and going, moments of consciousness mixed with delirium. 3 days of Evelyn watching the street, jumping at every sound, expecting Granger's men to appear at any moment. But they didn't come. The telegram back from Marshal Garrett arrived on the second day. Brief and professional. Received your message? Investigating. Will arrive Red Creek within 48 hours. Stay safe. Garrett. On the morning of the 4th day, Boone woke up clear-headed for the first time. Where are we? Evelyn nearly cried with relief. Red Creek, Doc Warren's place. You've been unconscious for 3 days. 3 days? He tried to sit up, grimaced at the pain. Granger thinks we're dead. Or at least we hope he does. Marshal Garrett is on his way. Boone absorbed this. The documents? Granger has them. All of them. There's no physical evidence anymore. Just our word against his. Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. That might not be enough. Granger's got influence, connections, without proof. I know. She gripped his hand. But it's all we've got. That afternoon, riders appeared on the road from the south. Evelyn's heart stopped. She counted them. 6 men, well-armed, riding in formation. For a terrible moment, she thought it was Granger. Then she saw the badge on the lead rider's coat. Marshal Garrett. He was a lean man in his 50s, weathered and hard, with eyes that missed nothing. He dismounted in front of the doctor's office, knocked once, and entered. Miss Mercer, I'm Marshal Garrett. Got your telegram. Evelyn stood. Thank you for coming. You said you had information about the Riker gang case, about Silas Granger's involvement. I do. We both do. She gestured to Boone. This is Boone Callahan. He's been helping me. Garrett looked at Boone's bandaged shoulder. Looks like someone disagreed with that decision. Granger shot me, Boone said, in the Giant's grave down in the southern Badlands. He'd been waiting there, knew we'd come for the evidence. What evidence? Documents proving he financed the Riker gang, transfer papers, authorizations, all with his signature. We found them hidden in an old mine, exactly where the gang was supposed to have stashed them. And where are these documents now? Granger took them. Then he tried to kill us by collapsing the mine on top of us. We barely escaped. Garrett's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation. You have any proof beyond your word? 3 dead men in the box canyon, Evelyn said. Granger's hired guns. He murdered them when they failed to kill us. The canyon collapsed. There's nothing left but rubble. Then dig it out. Send men down there. You'll find the bodies. That could take months, years even. Garrett sat down. Look, I believe something happened to you, but believing and proving are different things. Granger's one of the most powerful men in the territory. To go after him, I need more than testimony from 2 people he claims are criminals. So that's it? Evelyn's voice rose. He wins? He murders and steals and destroys lives, and he just walks away? I didn't say that. Garrett pulled out a notebook. Tell me everything, every detail. If there's a case to be made, I'll make it. But I need facts. They talked for hours. Evelyn described her capture by the gang, the months of imprisonment, Riker's drunken confession about the hiding place. Boone detailed the attacks on his cabin, the ambush at Blackwell Mine, Granger's confession in the collapsed mine. Garrett wrote it all down, asked pointed questions, probed for inconsistencies. He was thorough, professional, and increasingly convinced. Here's the problem, he said finally. Everything you've told me is consistent with Granger being dirty, but it's all circumstantial. Defense lawyer would tear it apart in minutes. So what do? We need him to incriminate himself, get him to confess, or make a mistake that proves his involvement. How? Garrett was quiet for a moment. Then, we make him think you're still a threat. Draw him out into the open. You want to use us as bait, Boone said. I want to give him a chance to hang himself. The marshal stood. I'll head to Black Hollow, start asking questions. Make it known that I'm investigating new evidence in the Riker gang case. Word will get back to Granger. When it does, he'll panic. Or he'll run, Evelyn said. Men like Granger don't run. They double down. He'll try to eliminate the threat, which means coming after you again. And when he does, you'll be waiting. That's the idea? It was risky, dangerous, and probably their only chance. When do we start? Boone asked. Soon as you can ride. Few more days, maybe. Give that shoulder time to heal. Garrett moved toward the door. In the meantime, I'll set things in motion. One way or another, this ends soon. After the marshal left, Evelyn sat beside Boone's bed again. This is it, she said quietly. One last throw of the dice. Yeah. If it doesn't work, we're dead. Granger will make sure of it this time. I know. She looked at him. Why are you still helping me? You could leave, right away. Go back to your mountain. This isn't your fight anymore. It's been my fight since the day I watched that town let my family die. Maybe before that. He reached for her hand. Besides, where else would I go? Somewhere safe. Somewhere far from here. There is no safe. Not while men like Granger are allowed to do what they want without consequences. His grip tightened on her hand. 7 years I've been hiding on that mountain, telling myself I was done with people. But I wasn't done. I was just waiting. Waiting for a reason to come back down, to fight again. You gave me that reason. Tears slid down her cheeks. I'm sorry. Don't be. Best thing that happened to me in 7 years, remember? She smiled through the tears. You really are a terrible liar. Maybe, but I'm telling the truth now. They sat together in the fading light, hands clasped, waiting for what would come next. Outside, the sun set over the desert, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. Marshal Garrett returned to Red Creek 5 days later with news that made Evelyn's blood run cold. Granger knows you're alive, he said, standing in Doc Warren's office with mud on his boots and exhaustion on his face. Word got back to him 2 days ago. Someone in town saw you ride through, told one of his men. How did he react? Boone asked. He was on his feet now, moving carefully, his shoulder still wrapped but healing. He didn't. That's what worries me. Garrett poured himself coffee from Warren's pot. I made a show of investigating, asked questions around Black Hollow about his relationship with the Riker gang. Expected him to lawyer up, make threats, use his influence. Instead, he acted like a man with nothing to hide. Cooperative, pleasant. Even offered to help with my investigation. That doesn't sound like the Granger we know, Evelyn said. No, it doesn't. Which means he's planning something. Garrett set down his cup. I've got 4 deputies watching his house and business. If he makes a move, we'll know about it. Unless he's already made it, Boone said quietly. Men like Granger don't wait around for the law to close in. He's too smart for that. So what's he doing? Getting ready to disappear, liquidating assets, moving money, setting up a new life somewhere the law can't touch him. Garrett's jaw tightened. We can't let that happen. Then we force his hand, make him come to us instead of running. How? Boone looked at Evelyn. We tell him we found more evidence, documents he doesn't know about, hidden somewhere safe, and we offer to trade, his freedom for ours. That's insane, Warren said from his chair by the window. He'll know it's a trap. Probably, but he can't risk us actually having evidence. His whole plan depends on no proof existing. Even the possibility that we found something will eat at him. Garrett considered this. Where would this meeting happen? Raven Ridge, my cabin. It's defensible, I know the terrain, and it's far enough from town that his men won't have backup nearby. You want to lure him into a siege after what happened last time? Last time I was protecting one person. This time I'll have a federal marshal and however many deputies you can spare. Boone moved to the window, looked out at the street. We end this where it started, on my mountain. Evelyn stood. And what makes you think he'll come? Granger's not stupid. He won't walk into an obvious trap. He will if the bait's good enough, if he believes we really do have evidence that could destroy him. Boone turned to face her. And he'll only believe that if the message comes from you. From me? You're the one he's been chasing for a year. You're the one he thinks knows all his secrets. If you reach out, offer a trade, he'll at least consider it, especially if you make it personal. Tell him you're tired of running, tired of being hunted, that you just want your life back. He'll never believe I'd just hand over evidence. You won't be handing it over. You'll be trading it for a signed confession, something that guarantees your safety even if he destroys the documents. Make it sound like you've thought this through, like you're being smart about protecting yourself. Garrett was nodding slowly. It could work. Granger's arrogant enough to think he can outmaneuver you. He'll come to the meeting planning to kill you and take whatever evidence you have. And we'll be waiting, Boone said. Warren cleared his throat. You're all forgetting something. Even if this works, even if you catch Granger red-handed trying to murder federal witnesses, you still don't have the original documents. Without that physical evidence, a good lawyer could still get him acquitted. Then we make him bring the documents, Evelyn said. Tell him we need to verify they're all accounted for before we hand over what we found. Make it part of the trade. That might actually work, Garrett said. If he shows up with those certificates in his possession, trying to trade them to people he's planning to kill, that's conspiracy to commit murder. Even without the document's content as evidence, the act itself is a crime. Boone looked at each of them in turn. So we're doing this? We're doing this, Garrett confirmed. I'll bring 6 deputies, position them around the cabin before Granger arrives. The moment he makes his move, we close in. When? 3 days from now. That gives me time to get my men in place and gives Granger enough time to plan his attack. We make it seem like you're vulnerable, still recovering from your wounds. Evelyn felt her stomach twist. 3 days. 3 days until they either ended this or died trying. The letter was sent that afternoon via messenger to Black Hollow. Evelyn had written it carefully, making it sound desperate but not pathetic, scared but not stupid. Mr. Granger, I know what you did. I have proof you don't know about. Documents Riker gave me before the raid, insurance, he said, in case his partners betrayed him. I'm tired of running. I want my life back. Meet me at Boone Callahan's cabin on Raven Ridge 3 days from now at noon. Bring the certificates you took from the mine. I'll bring what I have. We trade everything and go our separate ways. You leave me alone forever, I destroy the evidence and never speak of this again. If you don't come, I give everything to Marshal Garrett and let the courts decide. Your choice. Evelyn Mercer. Think he'll buy it? Warren asked. He'll buy that I'm scared, Evelyn said. Whether he believes the rest doesn't matter. Curiosity alone will bring him. They rode back to Raven Ridge the next morning. Boone's shoulder was still tender, but he could move without the blinding pain. Doc Warren had done good work, and the wound was healing clean. The cabin looked exactly as they'd left it weeks ago. Snow had drifted against the walls, and the barricades Boone had built were still in place, riddled with bullet holes from Granger's first attack. Home sweet home, Evelyn said quietly. Boone dismounted carefully. Help me clear the snow. I want to see what needs repairing. They spent the day making the cabin defensible again. Boone reinforced the barricades, positioned weapons at strategic points, made sure there were clear sight lines to all approaches. Garrett's deputies arrived that evening, 6 hard men who knew their business. They spread out around the cabin, taking positions in the rocks and trees, setting up crossfire zones. Granger comes up that trail, Garrett said, pointing to the main approach. He'll be in the kill zone before he knows it. We let him get close, let him make his move, then we take him. What if he brings an army? Evelyn asked. Then we hold them off until reinforcements arrive from Red Creek. I've got another 12 men on standby. It was a good plan. Solid, professional. But Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to go wrong. That night, she and Boone sat by the fire like they had before, waiting for dawn and whatever it would bring. Are you scared? She asked. Yes. Me too. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. She looked at him across the flickering firelight. If this goes bad tomorrow, it won't. But if it does, I want you to know something. She took a breath. You saved my life. Not just from Granger, from everything. When I came to Black Hollow looking for my brother, I was already half dead inside. The town just finished what the Riker gang started. But you reminded me that not everyone is cruel, that some people still do the right thing just because it's right. Boone was quiet for a long moment. You saved me too. I was dying up here, just slower than you were. Dying of loneliness and hate. You gave me something to fight for again, someone to fight for. Is that what this is? You fighting for me? No, this is us fighting together. There's a difference. She moved closer to him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. They sat that way until the fire burned low and sleep finally claimed them. Noon came clear and cold. Boone stood at the window, watching the trail. Garrett was positioned in the rocks above the cabin with 2 deputies. The other 4 were spread through the trees, invisible unless you knew where to look. Evelyn checked her revolver for the 10th time. What if he doesn't come? He'll come. And he did. They appeared just after 12:30. Silas Granger on a black horse, flanked by 8 armed men. Not as many as Boone had feared, but more than he'd hoped. He brought an escort, Evelyn said. Expected. He's not going to walk into this alone. Granger stopped his men 50 yards from the cabin, just outside the kill zone Garrett had established. He was being careful, not letting himself get surrounded. Smart. Miss Mercer, Granger's voice carried across the snow. Mr. Callahan, I received your letter. Boone opened the cabin door, stepped out. His rifle was in his hands but pointed down. You alone, Granger? Hardly. Did you expect me to be? Expected you to be smarter than to bring witnesses to a murder. Granger smiled. Murder? I'm here to negotiate, nothing more. You said you had evidence. I brought what you asked for. He patted the satchel tied to his saddle. The certificates from the mine. All of them. How do we know that's what's really in there? You'll have to trust me. Trust? That's rich coming from you. Mr. Callahan, I'm a businessman. I make deals. This is just another deal. Granger gestured to his men. I brought insurance, yes, but only because I wasn't sure if you'd honor your word. The letter said we trade and go our separate ways. I'm prepared to do exactly that. Evelyn stepped out of the cabin. You tried to bury us alive. A regrettable necessity. But circumstances have changed. Marshal Garrett has been asking uncomfortable questions. It's become clear to me that continuing this conflict serves neither of us. Granger's voice was smooth, reasonable. So I'm offering you a genuine deal. You give me whatever evidence you found, I give you these certificates, and we both walk away. You never mention my name again, and I ensure you're left alone to live your life in peace. You expect us to believe that? Boone said. I expect you to be pragmatic. What other choice do you have? If you go to the authorities with your story, it's your word against mine. You have no proof, no witnesses except each other. Meanwhile, I have resources, lawyers, influence. Even if charges were filed, I'd never be convicted. Maybe, but you can't risk it, can you? That's why you're really here, because even a small chance of those documents surfacing terrifies you. Granger's smile tightened. Everyone's afraid of something, Mr. Callahan. I'm simply being honest about my concerns. Now, shall we complete this transaction like civilized people, or would you prefer to continue this standoff? Boone looked at Evelyn. She nodded slightly. All right, Boone said. You bring the satchel halfway. Evelyn brings our documents to the same spot. You both verify what you're getting, then trade. Acceptable. But I choose which of my men accompanies me. No. You come alone, or this doesn't happen. Granger considered this. Boone could see him calculating odds, looking for angles. Finally, he nodded. Very well. Alone. He dismounted, took the satchel, and started walking toward the cabin. Evelyn took a deep breath, grabbed the envelope they'd prepared, empty except for blank paper, and walked out to meet him. They met in the middle of the clearing. Granger opened the satchel, showed her the documents inside. She recognized them from the mine, transfer papers, certificates, all bearing his signature. Satisfied? He asked. Let me see them closer. She reached for the satchel. Granger held it back. Your documents first. Evelyn held up the envelope. Everything Cade Riker gave me. Letters, authorizations, proof of payment, your entire conspiracy documented. Open it. I want to see. You show me yours, I'll show you mine. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Granger made his mistake. His hand moved toward his coat. Now! Boone shouted. Granger drew a pistol, swung it toward Evelyn. Boone's rifle came up, fired. The bullet caught Granger in the arm, spinning him around, the pistol flying free. Instantly, Granger's men drew their weapons, and Garrett's deputies opened fire. The clearing erupted in gunfire. Granger's men, caught in crossfire from 3 directions, went down fast. 2 dropped immediately. 3 more dove for cover behind their horses. The rest returned fire wildly, not sure where the shots were coming from. Evelyn hit the ground, crawled toward the cabin. Bullets kicked up snow around her. Granger, clutching his wounded arm, scrambled for his horse. But Garrett was already there, coming down from the rocks, rifle trained on him. Federal Marshal, don't move. Granger froze. The gunfight lasted maybe 30 seconds. When it was over, 3 of Granger's men were dead, 4 were wounded and surrendering, and 1 had managed to ride away. Garrett's deputies emerged from cover, weapons ready, securing the scene. Silas Granger, Garrett said formally, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder of federal witnesses, and accessory to the crimes of the Riker gang. Granger looked at the satchel lying in the snow, then at Evelyn. You didn't have anything, did you? That envelope is empty. Completely empty, Evelyn confirmed. Then you have no evidence, nothing that will stand up in court. We have the certificates you brought, Garrett said, picking up the satchel. Documents you admitted contain proof of your crimes. Documents you brought here specifically to trade for evidence you wanted to destroy. That's consciousness of guilt. Any jury will see that. I want a lawyer. You'll get one. In Denver, after your trial. Garrett signaled his deputies. Bind him, and get a wagon for the wounded. We're taking everyone back to Red Creek. Boone helped Evelyn to her feet. She was shaking, adrenaline crashing through her system. It's over, he said quietly. Is it? He said it himself. He has resources, lawyers. What if he beats this? He won't. Garrett joined them, holding the satchel. I've been investigating financial crimes for 15 years. These documents are a prosecutor's dream. Transfer papers directly linking Granger to known criminals, dated before and during the robberies. Payment authorizations in his handwriting. It's all here. But without testimony placing him with the gang, we have your testimony. We have Boone's testimony about what Granger said in the mine. We have the fact that he just tried to murder you both in front of a federal marshal and 6 witnesses. Garrett smiled grimly. Trust me, he's done. They watched as Granger was loaded into a wagon, his arm bandaged, his expensive coat covered in blood and dirt. He looked at Evelyn one last time, and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Fear. The man who'd terrorized her for a year, who'd ordered beatings and murder and tried to bury her alive, was finally afraid. Goodbye, Mr. Granger, she said quietly. He didn't respond. The wagon pulled away, surrounded by armed deputies, heading toward Red Creek and Justice. The days that followed were strange. Evelyn and Boone stayed at the cabin while Garrett handled the legal proceedings in Denver. The marshal sent regular updates via telegraph. Granger's arrest had caused a sensation. The territorial governor had gotten involved. Federal prosecutors were building a case that grew stronger every day. More evidence surfaced. Townspeople in Black Hollow, no longer afraid of Granger's influence, came forward with information. His business ledgers were seized, showing payments to known associates of the Riker gang. His bank records revealed suspicious transfers made days before each robbery. The web of his crimes unraveled completely. 3 weeks after his arrest, Granger made a deal. He agreed to testify against several other prominent businessmen who'd been involved in the conspiracy in exchange for life imprisonment instead of hanging. The trial lasted 4 days. The verdict took the jury 40 minutes, guilty on all counts. Evelyn received the telegram at the cabin. She read it twice, making sure she understood, then showed it to Boone. It's really over, she said. It's really over. She started crying then, great racking sobs she couldn't control. Not from sadness, but from relief. The weight she'd been carrying for more than a year, The fear, the anger, the constant knowledge that someone wanted her dead finally lifted. Boone held her while she cried, said nothing, just let her get it out. When she finally stopped, he made coffee, and they sat by the fire. "What happens now?" he asked. "I don't know. For the first time in forever, I actually have choices." She looked around the cabin. "I could go anywhere, do anything, start over somewhere nobody knows me." "You could, but I don't want to." "No?" "No." She met his eyes. "I want to stay here, on this mountain, with you, if you'll have me." Boone was quiet for a long moment. "You sure? It's a hard life up here, lonely sometimes, brutal winters." "I know, I've seen it, and I still want to stay." "Why?" "Because this is the first place I've felt safe since my brother died. Because you're the first person who saw me as something other than a victim or a criminal. Because I'm tired of running, and this feels like home." She reached for his hand. "Is that enough?" "It's more than enough." Spring came to Raven Ridge like a promise. The snow melted, revealing green beneath. Wildflowers appeared in impossible places, purple and yellow against gray stone. The creek that ran past the cabin unfroze, filled with runoff from the high peaks. Evelyn and Boone worked together to rebuild what the siege had damaged. They replaced broken windows, patched bullet holes, reinforced walls. She learned to hunt, to trap, to read weather signs the way Boone did. He taught her about the mountain, which plants were edible, which tracks meant danger, where the deer came down in summer. She taught him how to laugh again, how to trust another person, how to let someone in. They didn't talk much about the past. What was there to say? The town that had tried to destroy Evelyn was already changing. With Granger gone, his criminal empire collapsed. Good people who'd been too afraid to speak up finally did. Black Hollow wouldn't become perfect overnight, but it was getting better. And up on Raven Ridge, two people who'd been broken by violence and loss were slowly putting themselves back together. One afternoon in late May, they rode down to Red Creek for supplies. Doc Warren greeted them with a smile. "Heard from Marshal Garrett," he said. "Granger's been transferred to a federal prison in Kansas. Life sentence, no possibility of parole." "Good," Evelyn said. "Also heard something else. The territorial judge formally cleared your name. All charges dismissed. You're officially innocent." She absorbed this. Innocent. After a year of being called a criminal, of being treated like dirt, she was finally, officially innocent. "Thank you for telling me. There's more." The victims' families, people who lost money in the Riker gang's robberies, they're getting compensated from Granger's seized assets. Your brother's estate will receive payment for what was stolen. Evelyn felt tears burning her eyes. Thomas would have liked that. They bought supplies, talked with people who no longer looked at Evelyn with suspicion or hatred, then rode back to the mountain as the sun set. That night, sitting by the fire, Boone spoke. "Been thinking about something." "What's that?" 7 years I've been alone up here. Told myself it was better that way, safer, that people only brought pain." He looked at her. "I was wrong. People can bring pain, yeah, but they can also bring everything else. Joy, purpose, meaning. Where's this going?" "I'm saying I don't want to be alone anymore. I'm saying I want to build a life up here, with you. A real life, not just survival." Evelyn smiled. "I want that too." "Then let's do it. Let's build something that lasts." They did. Over the months that followed, they expanded the cabin. Added a second room, a better kitchen, a porch where they could sit and watch the stars. They planted a garden, raised chickens, made the mountain home into something more than just a hiding place. People from Red Creek started visiting occasionally. Doc Warren came up every few weeks, bringing news and staying for dinner. Marshal Garrett stopped by once on his way to investigate something in Wyoming, spent an evening swapping stories by the fire. The mountain was still isolated, still brutal in winter, but it was no longer a prison. One evening in October, as the first snow of the season began to fall, Evelyn and Boone stood on the porch, looking out over the valley. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Helping me that day in town?" "Not once. Even when you got shot? Even when we almost died a dozen times? Even then," he looked at her. "You know what I learned through all this?" "What?" That the worst thing you can do is give up on people. I did that after Sarah and Daniel died. Decided everyone was garbage, turned my back on the whole world, but that didn't protect me from pain. It just made me empty. And now? Now I'm not empty anymore. Because of you. Because I chose to care about someone again, even when it was dangerous and stupid and probably going to get me killed. She leaned against him. You know what I learned? Tell me. That some people are worth believing in. My brother was worth believing in. You were worth believing in. Even when the whole world seemed evil, there were still people trying to do the right thing. She paused. I almost forgot that. Almost let Granger and his cruelty make me think everyone was like him. But they're not. No, they're not. They stood together as the snow fell, covering the mountain in white, making everything clean and new. Below them, Black Hollow was probably settling in for winter. People going about their lives, unaware or uncaring about what had happened on Raven Ridge. Some of them had learned from Granger's downfall. Others probably hadn't. Towns were like people, capable of great good and terrible evil, often at the same time. But that wasn't Evelyn's problem anymore. She'd spent a year being defined by other people's opinions, other people's cruelty. No more. Up here, on this mountain, she got to decide who she was, and who she was becoming. We should go inside, Boone said. Getting cold. In a minute. I want to watch the snow a little longer. All right. They stayed on the porch until the stars came out, bright and sharp in the winter sky. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called. The wind whispered through the pines. The world turned on, indifferent to human drama, beautiful and harsh and endlessly mysterious. And two people who'd been hunted, broken, and left for dead stood together in the place they'd chosen to call home, watching the night and knowing they'd survived. Not because they were perfect, not because they'd made all the right choices, but because when it mattered most, they'd chosen to trust each other, to fight together, to believe that maybe, just maybe, the world still had room for people who tried to do what was right. The snow fell heavier. They went inside, built up the fire, made dinner from the supplies they'd put away for winter. They talked about small things, what needed fixing before the deep cold came, whether they should expand the chicken coop, if Doc Warren would make it up for Christmas. Simple things. Normal things. The kind of life Evelyn had thought was lost to her forever. Years later, people in Red Creek would tell stories about the winter Silas Granger fell, about the woman he'd tried to destroy and the mountain man who'd protected her, about justice finally coming for a powerful man who'd thought himself untouchable. But the real story wasn't about justice or revenge or good triumphing over evil. It was about two damaged people finding each other in the darkness and deciding to build something better than what they'd lost. It was about learning that caring for someone, even when it's dangerous, is what makes us human. It was about understanding that the worst cruelty isn't what evil people do. It's what happens when good people turn away. And it was about a cabin on Raven Ridge standing strong against the winter wind, a light burning in the window like a promise that home still existed for those brave enough to fight for it. Evelyn Mercer had come to Black Hollow looking for her brother and found only death and cruelty. But on a frozen mountain, in the last place she expected, she found something better. She found family, purpose, home. And she found Boone Callahan, the scarred hunter who reminded her that some people still believed in doing right, even when it cost them everything. Together, they proved that the people who try to break you don't always win. Sometimes, if you're strong enough and lucky enough and stubborn enough to keep fighting, you win instead. And sometimes that's enough.